Alright, a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, from the flight deck. Once again, it's Captain Nabs here with you for another flight in the PMDG 737. Thought I had muted that, but apparently I did not mute that properly, so there we go. Do that now. Yeah, sorry guys. So as you can see, we're back in the 737 for another pilot's life. Unfortunately, it is night in Vancouver. It's very early in the morning there. It's about 6:30 in the morning, assuming that everything is correct. So everything is quite dark this morning as we're getting started. Today's mission, it's, as the stream title implies, it's a cross-Canada long haul. We are heading all the way from Vancouver to Toronto. So not the longest flight you could do in Canada, but definitely a huge milk run for the airlines, first of all. This is a big flight. It's a long flight, but it is a very heavily served market under normal times anyways. Oftentimes there will be heavy aircraft on this route. It will be flown by, WestJet doesn't have too many heavy aircraft, but Air Canada will fly this route with heavy aircraft. They'll fly it with 87s and 777s because the demand is there. They have that many people flying back and forth 5-6 times a day to warrant heavy aircraft that are nearly full with the number of people going back and forth. So that is our mission for today, is Vancouver to Toronto. It's a pretty straight shot there. Our flight plan today is going to be a very straight line flight plan today. We are going to be just basically taking off, and we're going to cut right through the United States of America here, through Montana, the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, just to take the shortest route, because it also is going to take advantage of the winds en route. If I can pull up my flight plan for just a second here. And I just scroll right down to the bottom today. There was a couple different routes. There is a purely Canadian route that you can get. Why this is showing so little of... there we go. Close that. There we go. But yeah, here is the route. It is a very direct shot. It's cutting through America, but also at the same time picking up hopefully some of these tailwinds as we get more towards the tail end of our flight. We got a big strong tailwind right at the start, dies off across the as we cross the Rockies in the first part of the prairies, and should pick up again. So we're kind of angling a little bit southward to make sure we pick up that rather than taking the more traditional kind of northern all-Canadian route. Anyways, we are going to hop in this flight deck because it's not a short flight. It's about a 4-hour flight, so we need to get this party started if we're going to get there today. So, we are in the flight deck of our 737. As always, our handy FS2 crew is going to be there. It is a little bit dark in the flight deck today, so if you haven't ever seen this before, it's a really neat little tool. You have to install it in your P3D installation, but then it'll start up automatically whenever you run it. It's called just Lorby Flashlight. For those of you that don't know, Lorby makes a whole bunch of useful little utilities, a lot of little tiny small utilities that are very useful in flight sim. And so one of them is, of course, the Lorby flashlight here, which allows us to put a flashlight on our head, and we can look around the flight deck with a flashlight on our head. We can select the color, whether we want it to be kind of more of a flood or a very distinct spotlight, and we can connect it to the sim, and there we go. So now there is a floodlight there, or we could do it as more of a spotlight. It just looks around the sim, but it's great when you have a dark airplane because it helps you just find those switches that you're looking for essentially in the dark. And I'm just hold on, I just have to reset my track IR here so I can see what I'm doing here. Because what we're trying to find, of course, is the battery switch, and for some reason I really have to look a long way up today to spot it. So there we go. And this is why the flood, I think, is better. It's a little bit big sometimes, but there we go. Now you can see everything in the flight deck, so we can turn on the battery switch, get our battery going, and we can also put on our external power, which will get everything else running in our airplane. And then we can also just use this to make sure we can find the panel lighting switch, get that going, and or this airplane's up here, the dome light switch. And there we go. And now we don't really need that anymore, but it's kind of a neat little utility if you've ever been stuck at that point where you can't get into the you can't find the battery switch in a dark flight deck. And this is something that actually I do like. Microsoft Flight Simulator improved upon this. They, by default, if the power is off on an airplane at night, they give you a little flashlight that you can use to kind of spot things around the airplane. So that is a very useful tool to have. If you've never seen it, Lorby flashlight. It's just, like I said, a very useful tool. Just for getting this airplane started when it's dark, or any airplane started when it's dark and you can't see what's happening in the flight deck. In the meantime, because it is dark, let's get all of our panel lighting on here. And let's go ahead and just do our usual thing here, which is to start aligning the IRSs. Overspeed warning test, and if I can get it to go, yep, the flight recorder test. We've got the rear lights working up here. The oxygen level is good up there. And that's about it. We can turn on the emergency lights, make sure that the nav lights are on, the logo light should be on because it's dark outside. We want people to see what company we work for, and that's about it. One thing you'll notice today too, it's snowing out there. Look at the snow accumulating on the window. We are going to go do a de-ice in the 3.7, which I don't think I've done. So that's going to be another fun little adventure we're going to do here as we get ready to go. So in the meantime, let us get... let's get a couple of parties started here. First of all, let's call for fuel. And let's go ahead and see you guys. Yeah, it's a view okay? That's a view. Actually, I could probably leave it right about there. You guys can still see most of what's going on there. Alright, and let's go ahead and just configure our departure here today. So we're going to say that the runways are contaminated today, so we're going to do a rated thrust takeoff. We're not going to do any... I think we can use a D-rate, but not a flex temp. I was reading on this. I'm... Stand by. Yeah. Do not use reduced thrust assumed temperature method for takeoff if the runway is contaminated by slush, snow, standing water, or ice. However, reduced thrust, or otherwise known as the fixed D-rate takeoff, is allowed on wet or contaminated runways provided takeoff performance accounts for the surface condition. So we'll say that our calculations have done that, so we'll use the D-rated but not the assumed temperature method. Generally with contaminated surfaces, you'll want a higher flap setting because you want to get off that contaminated surface sooner so that you can accelerate better. Anti-ice, yes, engine anti-ice is going to be required. And wing anti-ice, we're going to say engine anti-ice and wing anti-ice are going to be required for the takeoff today. Yeah, there we go, that's all there. And we can go ahead and get this guy started.
Okay, let's get this show on the road.
Alright, and he is started. I'm just going to double check that I am indeed connected to VATSIM. I am. No controllers online, so it's just going to be up to us to do our thing here. Alright, so we're just going to have a quick look at the overhead panel, but the FO is going to do most of this setup for us here, as long as we've got power all on, which we do. One thing we should do as well at this point, just get some window heat on. That's going to take a little while for them to heat up in this colder temperature. And that is in the auto position, right? No, that's the auto. Yeah, so that's the open position. That's where we want that. We want the PAX and auto. The recirc fans are on, and the rest of this we're not going to play with too much at this point. We are going to get into programming that FMS as always, and we'll take it from there. And even now with the window heat on, you can see in little increments the snow is starting to melt off the windows. So that'll hopefully happen over the next couple minutes, and we will get into this FMS. Let's see how we're going to do this today. Yeah, I think we'll do it the same way we always do it, which is we will bring this up here. And we will bring up on my screen here my AviaWorks FMC, which I always use for input, especially when inputting a flight plan, because otherwise inputting flight plans takes forever. So we are going to set ourselves up here with the FMC, verify the date of our AIRAC cycle. One thing I've noticed, and it's kind of interesting, and I'm not sure if this is something I'm doing wrong or if it's something that's been intentionally introduced, but with the Aerosoft Airbus, the FMC tends to load the wrong, outdated, expired AIRAC every time I first get into it. And if you don't notice it and fixes are missing, then you end up with a bit of a problem. And there usually is a page there. There is usually an ability here to switch the ARX cycles. I don't know if the 737 FMC has it, but a lot of FMCs will have it where they will have the next ARX cycle. You can have it preloaded, ready to go, so that when that time comes, 9 o'clock Zulu on that specific day, you can whatever crew is in the airplane can cycle it over wherever station it's at. And so what I found that the Aerosoft Airbus has done is it's automatically loading the wrong cycle, and you are required to really look at the screen, read it, make sure, confirm you have the right cycle in there, which is a little frustrating until I realized what was happening, and now I make it part of my habit. But it's a good habit to have in the beginning, in the first place, anyways. So I find it funny that it annoyed me at first just because I had no idea that that was happening, and then all of a sudden, when I became aware of it, I'm like, well, this is actually, it's true. So many people kind of look at that date and they don't really read it. I think that was probably the fuel truck. Yeah, that looks like a hydrant truck out there. Yep, he's waiting for our fuel load. Oop, not that one, that one. So today we are going all the way to Toronto. It's going to be a pretty good fuel load here. It's nice weather in Toronto, so we don't need a whole lot of extra. If I can find my flight plan wherever I put it here. One of these screens will have my flight plan on. There it is. We can give them a fuel load. 32,000 and change. So 32.3 we'll say here. Round it up a little bit. There we go. Can I do that even? There we go, 32,300. Always like to round up a little bit, have a little bit of extra gas in the tank. Alright. Vancouver, Toronto, departure. Let's have a quick little weather check here in Vancouver. It is snowing. Winds are favoring departures off the 8s. So we're going to depart 8 right, straight out departure on the Vancouver 1. And then we're going to end up going to... You guys can see it on the overlay on the bottom of the screen, but we are going to end up going to... let's see here. There it is. Chile, IWAC. There we go. Chile, IWAC. And just had... Remember that I didn't have my chat window open, so in case anybody wants to chat, it's there. So, alright. So, put it in really quick here. There's a whole bunch of waypoints. It shouldn't take more than a couple minutes to program this in. So, Chilliwack, 48, 30 north, 115 west. Oh, I hate trying to do this. Because I can never remember the format properly for this FMC. I want to say it's north 48300, and then west 115000. No, it's like that. I can never remember how to enter lat longs. I always end up struggling and ending up having to search for the answer on this because I don't do it enough. Alright, I almost had it, I just forgot the decimals. It has to have the decimals in there, so it's 4830.0 by west 11500.0. Haha! I was very close this time. KU 18 Quebec. DIK. I should really just like print a guide to that and just post it somewhere here in my flight deck, because every time this comes up I tend to need some help with it. Alright, I'm going to guess that this is the Dickinson VOR at 4651 by West 102.
Safety checks are all done. Are we good to start boarding?
Yes. Go for it.
Okay.
Alright, we're going to request boarding. Today it's a pretty empty airplane. Oh, didn't even have the jet bridge attached yet. Thanks for noticing that. It's a pretty empty airplane today. It's only about 50-something people in it, which is probably a somewhat more realistic flight load these days. It's just what was randomly selected by the FMC when I started up, but that works for me. Let's have an empty load today. because like I said, that's more realistic than what's going on a lot of the time. KP09A, KP03G, KP03G. These all these K waypoints here, they're just like part of a grid across the United States of various waypoints that you can use when flight planning. The only problem with them is that there's a lot of very similar waypoints, and if you transpose the numbers, especially if you're yeah, another long flight, especially if you're prone to what's it called, dyslexia, you know, you switch those two numbers around and it can change the location of that waypoint, and sometimes pretty substantially. So it's a good idea if you're using those waypoints to go and look through and make sure you're happy with everything. I don't think we're landing 33 right Toronto, so I'm going to go ahead and put in the ILS-24 right, and this is going to be the Nuber arrival. Nope. Alright, so Nuber for 24s both via Eisman, and 24 right ILS via Pigma, and that should all be in there then. Yep, that all looks good, so activate and execute, and that's it, the route is in. The ZFW, we can pull it from the flight plan. Estimated is 128.7. And the cost index today and the reserves. So the cost index today, we're looking at 38 for a cost index. Picking up the pace to try and make up some time. Reserves of 37 plus 21. That's going to end up being 5.8. I'm going to round it up to 5.9. That'll take us to Ottawa. And our cruise altitude today is planned at 350. Not 250. 350. There we go. And I think that's about it. 265 at 59. Well, again, fat fingers. Can't seem to get anything right today. 265 at 59. There we go. And we can do a D-rate, but we're not going to do the assumed temperature takeoff. So we'll just do a takeoff 1 D-rate. Hopefully we can get some speeds there for flap 15. We can. 143, 143, 149. And pop in the CFG at 19.1, and there we go. The FMC planning's done. I have not done. That's funny because I have not done much long haul flying lately. I've just been enjoying Microsoft Flight Simulator so much. Doing a lot of FS Economy flying in there, making money off of FS Economy that I find I've killed a decent portion of my day before I even have a chance to think about doing any long-haul flying. So long-haul flying is not something I've been doing much lately in P3D. A pilot's life has probably been about half of all the flying I've done in P3D for the last couple of months, which is a little bit sad, because I do like the P3D platform and I do love these airplanes, but that scenery is so good. I enjoy it so much. So I'm going to try and make a little bit more effort to get back into the airplanes and do a little bit more P3D hauling, but I find that I'm enjoying that Microsoft Flight Simulator scenery so much, and when I come back in this, it looks so rough. Even when you get to these good airports, the FS Dream Teams and the Flight Tampas and everything, it still looks rough by comparison. Alright, so we've got that set. He didn't set the cruise altitude, so I'm going to go ahead and set that. Maybe he wasn't there yet, but he set our landing altitude, so that's why I think he was there. Alright, let's see here. Speed, again, we need 149. Let me just kill that FMC in the corner. So our V2 is 149. Heading is 0, I believe it's 83. I'll pull up the chart in a second here. And the top altitude should be 7,000. And let me just pull up my charts, because I'm always trying to pull up something. I could pull them up on here, I guess, actually. Let's do that. Gonna need them sooner or later. Alright, so use those airports from our FMS, and then edit clip. So we're going to want to need to have, there it is, Vancouver 1 departure. Alright, so Vancouver 1 departure, and this should have everything I need on it. It is a 083 heading, and the top altitude is, maintains 7,000. So we do have the 083 and the 7,000, perfect. So that's all set up there. Altimeter setting right now, 2998. It looks like Buddy has set this up for us here. Light test. Okay, that looks good. He's got that in RTO already. Looks like he's ahead of me today here. Reset all my controls. Parking brake needs to be on. Since nobody else is around, we need Unicom. And the transponder should have a code of 2000. It does. Okay, I think we got everything. So let's do this. Pre-flight checklist. Pre-flight checklist.
Pre-flight checklist. Oxygen.
Tested 100%.
Tested 100%. Navigation transfer and display switches. Normal, auto. Window heat, on. Pressurization mode selector, auto. Flight instruments.
Heading 029. Altimeter 2998.
Checked. Parking brake.
Set.
Engine start levers.
Cut off.
Pre-flight checklist complete.
Are you ready for the takeoff briefing? Are you ready for the departure briefing? Are you ready for the departure briefing?
Go for it.
Alright, very good. So, today we are at... actually, let's do this. Before I give you the takeoff briefing, let's see here. Alright, so, we are parked. I believe we're parked in here. I don't even rightly know. I believe we are. I think we're parked right about here or here, something like that. So we're going to push back. We're going to head out for de-icing, which I believe is over here. I don't even know. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the de-icing procedures here. De-icing procedures. I have not done this in Vancouver before, so have a quick read of this. Pad controls for heading aircraft. De-icing pad west. 30 minutes prior to pushback. When about to pushback, when about to DC. Follow pad control instructions. Contact Iceman after de-icing is complete with aircraft. When advised by Iceman, contact pad control 3195. And under those circumstances, may aircraft be moved before pad control advises that the aircraft is cleared to taxi out of the bay. West pad aircraft queuing is on Victor south of Kilo and on Victor north of de-ice bay west 17 when aircraft ATC. So aircraft queuing is on Victor south of Kilo and on Victor north of de-ice bay W17. So it is those bays right there. And so we come in on Victor. I guess we face the terminal here. And then we taxi out the other side on Juliet. So we're going to come up here, get de-iced over here, and then go down. Go back down and out again. Okay. And then, so that's going to be our de-icing process. Once we're done with that, we are going to go ahead and taxi out for departure runway 08 left. So, again, initially it's going to be out of here. We're going to go up Victor to get to the de-ice, and then we're going to do a little bit of a loop, Juliet, Lima, to get to runway 08 left. Only hotspot is crossing runway 3113. The departure is, again, the Vancouver 1 departure. It's on plate 10-3 Delta and effective on the 5th of November of 2020. 100 miles safe is 12,800. It is mountainous terrain around here. Non-jets do not exceed 165. Jet aircraft, noise abatement procedure 1 or 2. Refer to 10-4 noise abatement procedures. No turns below 3,000, basically what it says. And runway 8 left. Climb heading 083 is assigned by TC. Maintain 7,000 is assigned. Expected radar vectors to filed or assigned route. And clearance to flight plan altitude within 5 minutes of departure. Any questions?
No questions.
Alright, and for this as well, we are going to need a couple things. First of all, we are going to need trim full nose down. And he's probably going to reset this for me anyways. Now, I don't know why, but for some reason when I try to run the trim using the trim switch, it doesn't want to go full nose down. So, for de-icing, we need the trim full nose down. We're going to need the slat flap up, and we are going to need... There we go, that'll do it. That's as far as I can go. Yeah, and we are going to need the bleeds and packs off when we get to the icing bay. We'll turn them on for now, but they have to be off. The APU should be off as well. There's not much to see in the outside view today because it's pretty dark, although it's getting a little bit lighter, and it's snowing. So there's not much to see out there today, unfortunately. But you get some views as we try to head over and do the de-icing as well. Did we board? We boarded, right? Yeah, we boarded already. Okay. We are going to need to start the APU. All the pumps are on, so we can go ahead and start the APU. And I think we're just about ready to go here. Just going to make sure I have my flight tracker running in SimToolkit Pro on my other screen here. That's running. I'm going to make sure my pilot's life is also ready to run here. So it's on the current screen. After this, after Toronto, we are going to go down to Orlando before we come back to Vancouver. So that's going to be a fun little triangle. And hopefully it'll be warmer in Orlando than it is these days in Vancouver and Toronto.
Here's the load sheet for you.
Thank you. Alright, so he's got that going on. I did pull up the PMDG 737 FCOM Volume 1, and if you want to find out all about de-icing, you go to Supplementary Procedures Part 16, and engine anti-ice operation on the ground, so we are supposed to have it on anytime we suspect it, even if we don't see it. Taxi out, taxi at reduced speed, limit thrust to minimize ice ingestion. He's resetting the trim again for me now. De-icing, anti-icing. So if de-icing, anti-icing is required, APU as needed, but the APU should be shut down unless necessary. Flaps up. Thrust levers idle. Stab trim full nose down. Bleed switches off. APU bleed switch off. And after de-icing is completed, APU as needed. Control column move forward or aft. Slowly cycle the control column full aft a minimum of 3 times to drain residual fluid from the elevator balance bay. And verify the stab trim is set for takeoff. Do the normal before takeoff. So we do the before takeoff procedure. Call flaps as needed. So yeah, so that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna do de-icing. We're gonna simulate de-icing today here at Vancouver for a little bit of fun. All right, let's see here. APU generator appears to be online. I'm gonna not forget to turn that on today because I forgot that last time. Cockpit to ground. Oops, that one. Cockpit to ground.
Go ahead.
Please disconnect external power.
Roger. Disconnecting the GPU.
Alright, and I think we're just about ready to go, guys. Oh, we do have a tower. Haha. Excellent. Just looked at my V-Pilot and we actually have a tower online, so hooray! Got that on there. Vancouver Tower, good morning. WestJet 716, IFR clearance to Toronto.
WestJet 716 Vancouver Tower, good morning. You're cleared to Toronto Pearson via the Vancouver 1 departure, flight planned route. Departure runway 08 right, squawk 5142.
Okay, WestJet 716 is cleared to Toronto via the Vancouver 1 departure. Flight plan route departing runway 08 right. Squawk code is 5142. We're positive de-ice this morning.
Alright, WestJet 716 feedback is correct. Push and start is at your discretion, and you can contact me for taxi.
Okay, push and start at our discretion. We'll call you ready for the taxi, WestJet 716. Hey, look at that. We actually got some ATC. Nice, nice. Alright, so we got the 5142 in the box there. We are pretty much ready to go here. So we're going to go ahead and get GSX started here.
Hey guys, all passengers are on board. Are we cleared to close?
Go for it. Thank you.
Thanks. Let me know if you need anything.
Alright, so we are going to do the... Just waiting for them to close the door. Before start checklist to the line.
Before start checklist to the line. Fuel 32.3 thousand pounds. Pumps on. Passenger signs on. Windows.
Due to icing conditions, please stand
Locked.
by for engine start until
Locked.
push completed and brake set.
MCP.
Speed 149, heading 083, altitude 7,000. Speed 141, heading 083,
We're ready for push.
altitude 7,000.
Checked. Takeoff speeds.
Verified. V1 132, VR 133, V2 141.
Locking gear.
Checked. CDU pre-flight.
Complete.
Completed. Rudder and aileron trim.
Set and checked.
Taxi and takeoff briefing.
Complete.
Before start checklist completed to the line.
Departure check completed. Bypass bin inserted. Release
Before start checklist below the line.
Flight deck door closed and locked. Anti-collision light on. Before start checklist complete.
Here we go.
commencing push. Due to icing conditions, please stand by for engine start until push completed and brake set.
Here comes Buddy. We're on our way, guys. Now, it doesn't look too snowy out there. If it was really, truly snowy out there and the ramp was slippery, you probably wouldn't start the engines until you actually get the brakes set in position.
Starting one.
We now request your full attention as the flight attendant.
But since he heard me say starting engines, I guess he's doing it.
Seatbelt sign illuminates. You must fasten your
We have
seatbelt.
insufficient air pressure for the start.
Buckle and pull the loosen straps and tighten it up. To release your seatbelt, lift the upper portion of the buckle. We suggest that you keep your seatbelt fastened throughout the flight as we may experience turbulence. There are several emergency exits on this aircraft.
How about now?
Doors 2 aft and
Start engine 1.
Please take a
Starting one.
We now request your full attention as the flight attendant demonstrates behind you each
There we go. Now he's got it. Yeah, if it was slippery at all out here on the apron, if you were uncertain that the tug would be able to resist the airplane and not slide around, then you would not start the engines until the parking brake is set and the tug is pulling away. Why are there two cabin announcements going on simultaneously in my ears? Alright, there it is. So fuel valves are open. Fuel is flowing, and we have light off.
Set parking brakes.
I really want to make them both shut up because they're just talking over each other.
Starter cutout.
Check. Alright, and that seems to be a normal start. Start engine 2.
Starting two.
It's,
Last
yeah.
aircraft Falling,
It's not Twitch being muted. Twitch is muted.
You're looking for the 8th, we're
Somehow.
looking for the 8th,
Somehow it glitched.
altimeter is 299 8. Information alpha is current.
Arm to the strap and hug the cushion to your chest. We remind you that
Somehow it triggered both two halves of the announcement at the same time. I'm not sure how. There goes one half. Alright, sorry, we're at 25%. See, now I'm getting distracted by doing other things. Really should be focusing on the engine start. So there, the valves are open. We have fuel flow. We have light off. We do have oil pressure increasing. Oil pressure warning light is out. There. Somehow, I don't know how, I've never seen that glitch before, but I guess the FS2 crew announcement is done in two parts, and somehow the two parts triggered at the same time.
Starter cut out.
And I think that's why they talked over each other. Very good. Looks like we have normal start. You guys are good to disconnect.
Anti-ice coming on.
Perfect, thank you, sir. It is snowing, it is it's -0 out there. It's just hovering on the edge of, disgusting. Just on the minus side of 0. So yeah, we'll definitely have that engine in, wing anti-ice on, and we'll go get de-ice so we're all clean and ready to go. I'm not sure if there's actually a de-ice simulation here. We're just going to have to use our imaginations. But we'll run the procedures. I love how they pushed us like right into the gate pretty much here. Good thing nobody was parked there. I was debating that too. I was debating whether or not to manually set the pushback position. I decided to let GSX do it on its own. In general, GSX is pretty good at the FS Dream Team airports because they were created by the same person, so they go and they make all the definitions, the pushback positions and stuff work well at these airports. But sometimes you end up running up into little gates and positions like this that are a little weird.
Left is clear. Right is clear.
Flap 0. Flaps 1.
Flaps 1.
And now that he's done that, I'm going to go take the puts back up. Now, I'm not going to bother doing a flight control check now because there's just no point. There's no point in doing it until we've done the de-icing, and then we might have to get rid of any fluid and check the controls are working. So, before taxi checklist.
Before taxi checklist, generators on. Probe heat on. Anti-ice. Engine and wing anti-ice are on. Isolation valve auto. Engine start switches continuous. Recall checked. Auto brake, RTO, engine start levers.
Idle detent.
Flight controls.
To go. To make it cycle, I'll say checked.
Dispatch clearance
Checked.
checked. Before taxi checklist complete.
What gate were we at? We were at gate 26. Vancouver Tower, WestJet 716, pushback from gate 26, ready for taxi for de-ice.
WestJet 716, head over to the de-ice pads via Juliet, and ice pad number 1 at your discretion.
Okay, take Juliet for de-icing pad number 1, our discretion, WestJet 716. Alright, so pad number 1 appears to be there, so... Alright. Clear on the left.
Clear right.
Taxi light on. Set taxi light on.
Taxi light on.
Alright, well, we're just starting the taxi here. And flight button is active, which means the flight is active. And Also going to check my Sim Toolkit Pro is tracking. I'm not using Volanta because, again, I just didn't really like it that much last time. It's not terrible, but there's some things they need to work on. So until they get some of those issues fixed, for example, half my flights didn't get properly imported, there's not a whole lot of support. It seems like the support is only being offered through Discord, which to me is always a terrible platform to try and do things through. So, yeah, if that's the way they're going, I'm not terribly keen on it right now. It is a lot of great ideas, but it's not. It strikes me as still not quite ready for the prime time. Maybe it just needs some helpful tutorials, some helpful hints along the way. But it just strikes me as not being quite ready for the prime time yet. Alright, so down Juliet here and the ice pad 1. Now, most airline companies will usually have a de-icing checklist that will help ensure that the aircraft is configured. I don't have one handy. There may or may not be one, but out there on the internet. But we'll just go quickly again through the FCOM and just make sure that everything is set up correctly before we start the de-icing. I think the only thing really I have left to do is turn off all the bleeds. And I'm not sure that the FS2 crew really supports it, so I'm just going to do it all by myself here, and we'll sort of resume using the FS2 crew when we get to the before takeoff checklist phase. Alright, so these are the de-icing pads right here. The pad number 1 was the third pad, I believe, so that's pad number 1. Oh, actually, no, sorry. This is pad number 1. There was a taxiway first. This is pad number 1.
The cabin is secure.
Pad number 2, and so the next one here is going to be pad number. It's going to be pad number 1 actually. So the third turn is pad number 1. So I don't think it's terribly realistically simulated here, anyways. But we're going to do our best to sort of make the most out of it here. Alright, so at this point we would be talking to a pad controller. They would clear us into the de-icing bay, help tell us when and where to start, or when and where to stop. And the other thing we would need to calculate as well is a holdover time. Alright, something like that. Parking brake set, taxi light off. Alright, and bleeds 1 and 2 and APU bleed are all off. Let's just go through the FCOM together and just make sure I haven't missed anything here. So, for de-icing, anti-icing, APU as needed, preferably off. So, APU is off, flaps up, flaps are up, thrust levers are idle, stab trim is full nose down, engine bleed switches are off, and the APU bleed switch is off, and then that's it. After that, we do the de-icing. So we would pad control or Iceman WestJet 716 is brake set, aircraft configured for de-ice, and requesting type 1 and 4 on the wings and tail. And so they would start doing that. And while they're doing that, I'm going to just quickly look up a holdover time without knowing what kind of fluid. So if we just use a generic type 4, I have an app here from my tablet that actually will calculate the holdover time. You can find it. Maybe I should do it the old-fashioned way. Let's see if I can do it here. Alright, so I'm going to actually go and Google it here and find the actual document here. So the winter 2020-2021 holdover time guidelines. And what you're looking for is, I'm going to be looking for just a generic Type 4. So Type 4 fluids, they'll have very specific brands. If you're not sure what brand you're using, you'd use Type 4. So Type 4, generic, and so you got to look at the table here. Type 4 generic, Type 4 temperature, -3 and above, that is us. fluid concentration, so you'd have to find that out from the person applying the fluid. They would tell you how much they're using. Assuming it's 100%, and we have snow, it's, what's the visibility, 8 miles I think I said? 8 miles in light snow, so definitely light snow. One important thing with these two is that this is not based on the weather report of light snow, moderate snow, heavy snow. It's actually based on the visibility. It's a little bit more specific, and I'll show you that in 1 second. But say we're doing very light snow, our holdover time with Type 4 generic would be 2 hours, so we could wait 2 hours after we've de-iced to take off with this Type 4 on. There are always some conditions and notes. Always make sure you read those. Just want to find the visibility table here. So how do I know? Just trying to look through it here. Maybe it's under the supplemental guidance. Here it is. So then at the very end of the Type 4, or the holdover guidelines, here is snowfall intensity as a function of prevailing visibility. So don't go with light, moderate, or heavy in the METAR. Actually look at the visibility and compare it to your temperature and your daylight and darkness. So it is kind of darkness. It's -0, so we're going to say -1 and above. And the visibility is 8 miles, so it's greater than 4. We definitely fit into the very light category. If it was somewhere between 2.5 and 4, you'd say it was light. So you look at the actual temperature, whether it's daylight or darkness, because that affects how you perceive the snow and the visibility in snow. Look at the temperature, and then look at the actual visibility and see which category you fall into, and this is what you've got to use for de-icing. The heavy category, there's no de-icing fluid that can withstand a heavy snowfall. So if it was darkness today below 1 mile visibility, we could not depart. We would have to wait for the snow to reduce in intensity before we could depart. There is no such thing as a de-icing fluid that allows you to depart in conditions of heavy snow. So this is, just search for Holdover Times Canada. You can find this. You can take a copy of it. There's also apps out there on the internet. Yeah, so the program that I have on my tablet to do this is actually, it's a company-issued tablet, so it's a company-issued program that actually just compiles all this information into a neat little app. It's the same information, it's just done in a neat little app. If I can show you guys really quickly, and once I'm done showing you, then we'll say that the icing's complete here. So if I go to my, well, let's see, where do I have it here? Holdover Times. Yeah, okay, so it's done on my tablet here, and basically what you would do is you would select the station, you would select the temperature here. You can't really see it at all, it's terrible, but 0, you'd say the type of precipitation, so I would say snow, and the intensity is very light. It even gives you the guides here, greater than 3 miles, very light, and it tells you Type 1, 18 minutes, Type 4, 120 minutes. The neat thing about this app as well, you guys can't see this at all, I'm sorry, it paints out, is that there's also a timer built into it, so that you can hit start when the de-icing starts, and you'll get a warning when you run out of de-icing time instead of having to manually keep track of it. So, really useful tool. Not something that's necessarily available to you guys in general, but you could use those holdover times. Those holdover times are public information just on Transport Canada website. All right, so we're going to say that the Iceman was reported. De-icing is complete. All the men and equipment are clear. Remain brakes set, and contact pad control when you're ready to move again. So then we can go ahead and reset our aircraft. So we can see here. We can set the takeoff flaps. So I believe we had flap 15. There it goes. Set the takeoff trim of 4.94. And then we can get the bleeds back on. And let's just consult the FCOM again to make sure that everything's in here. So one thing I didn't do before is the flight control check control column. Move fully forward, fully aft. Slowly cycle the control column forward. Full forward to full aft, a minimum of 3 times to drain all fluid from the base. So fluid can get into the crevices when they're spraying the tail. Fluid can get into the crevices in the tail, and it can accumulate there. And it may not always drain out quickly. And there may be enough fluid in there to shift the balance, or possibly potentially also to freeze inside the elevators and possibly affect the mechanism of the elevators. And it could happen with all the flight controls, so it's important to make sure that we cycle those controls out. And we're also going to just check the ailerons, make sure for normal function nothing is jammed. Same with the rudder. Alright, stab trim. Verify set for takeoff. 4.94 up, and yeah, 4.94 up there. When engine anti-ice is required, do an engine run-up as needed to minimize ice buildup. Use the following procedure. Run up to 70% N1 for a minimum of 30 seconds. So, fan blade, ice buildup is cumulative. Fan spinner and fan blades were not de-iced prior to taxi. The time the engines were operating during the taxi should be included in the 30-minute interval. If airport service condition and concentration do not allow N1, 70% N1, then set thrust as high as practical and time at that thrust level. And that's it. So that's all done. So we'll talk about that momentarily here. At Winnipeg Tower, WestJet 716, de-icing is complete, ready to resume taxi.
WestJet 716, street straight ahead, and then Kilo Victor Lima, cross runway 13, hold short 8 right.
Alright, Kilo Victor Lima, cross runway 13, and we'll hold short of 08 right, WestJet 716. Alright, so set taxi light to on.
Taxi light on.
So as you can see, the scenery we have does not totally match what happened here in the real world. The second set of de-icing bays here don't exist in this scenery. So we're going to make a left turn here to join Kilo, and then Victor and Lima. So down here, you probably can't see it too well in this resolution, but Kilo, and then Victor, and then Lima. So we are going to do an engine run-up when we get to the runway here today. 70% N1 for 30 seconds. That just makes sure that any ice that's accumulated on the fan blades is thrown off before you try to hit takeoff power. Because as you're taxiing around, and slush and whatever can accumulate on your fan blades, just like they can accumulate on any other kind of aerofoil, whether it be wings, tails, etc. They can also accumulate on the fan blades in your engine. So you have to do a run-up to a high power setting. That was weird. To make sure you blow all that off. Alright, there we go. Yeah, man, get moving. Not like there's much. It's not like there's a lot of weight in there today. Alright, so this is Victor. Left turn on Victor. And then where we meet runway 13 is where we transition on to Lima. Montreal to Amman. Wow, that is a long haul. Makes my Vancouver-Toronto seem pretty lousy. The only reason I don't do long haul very much is that I find with myself being at home a lot more, I find that I have a lot of things that I want to do on the computer, and long haul flying takes away the computer for a long period of time. Set strobes on.
Strobes coming on.
Clear on the left.
Clear right.
So that's, I think, the biggest reason why I tend not to do long hauling right now. Is just that I, like I said, I tend to want to use my computer for other things throughout the day, and if I have a long haul flight going, I can't do that. So that's one reason why. 9 hours and 50 minutes. Well, this one's going to be about a 4-hour flight, so this is going to be long enough for me, I think. Put a taxi light back on? Yeah, we did, yep. Sounds good. So with a 2-hour holdover time, you don't have to be terribly conscious of it. You always have to keep it in the back of your mind. If we were to do Type 1 only, we would have had 18 minutes. It probably would have also been sufficient at the end of the day. Given that there's no lineup for takeoff here, it's a fairly short taxi out. We easily could have made it to the runway in 18 minutes or less. Why would you do Type 4 instead of Type 1 then? If you think there's any reason for delay, the worst thing is going back to the de-icing bay and doing it a second time, because that adds a lot of delay potentially. Type 1 is cheaper. If you only have to do a Type 1 spray instead of a Type 4 spray, it's a lot cheaper for the company, but it's always a bit of a risk you take if you do Type 1 versus Type 4. If you end up delayed and your Type 1 holdover time expires, you gotta go back to the de-icing bay and do it all again, and that adds a lot of time and wasted effort. So you'll find most people will tend to do, unless they really think there's no doubt they can get away with Type 1, they'll do Type 4. Before takeoff checklist.
Before takeoff checklist. Flaps.
Flaps 15, green light.
Stabilizer trim.
4.94 set. 4.94 up set. Set and checked.
Before takeoff checklist complete.
WestJet 716, short 08 right, ready for takeoff.
The cabin is secure.
WestJet 716 Vancouver terminal is offline. Frequency change approved airborne. Winds 030 at 5, altimeter 29er 8. Clear for takeoff runway 08 right.
Okay, back to Unicom in the air, clear for takeoff, runway 08 right, WestJet 716, thanks. Before takeoff procedures. Before takeoff procedures.
Check.
Clear on the left.
Clear right. Ready to go.
Okay, so we're going to do our takeoff here, our engine run up here for 30 seconds. Normally you would tell a controller if you're planning on doing this. I'm not doing it just because I forgot. I can hear it's very quiet, but you should tell a controller if you're going to do this, because it does take 30 seconds of you holding position on the runway here. And some airports, they don't want you to do that because of the time on the runway. I never did arm the LNAV and the VNAV, did I? Oh, there you go. In this case, I can just go straight from this now into the takeoff run. So there is 30 seconds. Takeoff.
Check. Thrust set.
Checked.
80 knots.
Checked.
V1.
Rotate. Positive rate.
Gear up. Select Command A.
Command A.
Swap COM 1.
Roger.
Flaps 5.
Flaps 5.
Flaps 1.
Flaps 1.
Flaps up.
Flaps up.
So because I had used the my actual flap lever to set the flap position instead of relying on the FO to do it, it wasn't retracting properly because it was still recognizing that position. So I had to do that kind of manually myself. So the trouble with the FS2 crew, and it's a great system in general, but if you're sort of following an abnormal procedure, it doesn't know what to do sometimes, and you can't talk to it and explain what's happening. It's just a script. So sometimes when things are abnormal, you just end up needing to do it yourself. But most of the time, it's a great system. There we go, leaving Vancouver's weather behind. And let's see, we are through 4,000, so we can go direct to our first fix, which is chilly, which is an adequate description of the weather these days. There we go, direct chilly, and we are in LNAV. After takeoff checklist.
After takeoff checklist. Engine bleeds. On. Packs. Auto. Landing gear. Up and off. Flaps. Up. No lights. After takeoff checklist complete.
Check.
level. Happy to release the cabin crew?
Go for it. Alright, so we'll go ahead and set our cruise altitude here. I think it's going to level off, so let's just do the altitude intervention button. That should restart that climb.
Okay.
I wasn't talking to you, buddy. Wing anti-ice operation in flight. The wing anti-ice system may be used as a de-icer or anti-icer in flight. Only the primary method is to use a de-icer by allowing ice to accumulate before turning wing anti-ice on. The procedure provides the cleanest airfoil surface, the least possible run-back ice formation, and the least thrust fuel penalty. Alright. Do not use wing anti-ices above 10 degrees. Okay, so they don't like to use the wing anti-ice in flight unless we actually see ice accumulating on the wings, which you can't see from here, but yeah, don't see any, so we're good. And there we go, off towards the sunrise. I love it. It's going to be a beautiful morning out there. And we're going to fly across some really, really cold air before we get to Toronto, that's for sure. But there we go, so that is our flight there. He did not reset these, which he should have in the after takeoff checklist. I have a feeling I screwed up FS2 crew with my de-icing there.
Okay to release the cabin?
Go for it.
Okay, okay.
It looks really nice out here. Descent checklist next. We'll go ahead and get rid of the FS2 crew because he's really not going to do anything now for the next like 4 hours. Alright, so we've got 291 indicated for our climb speed today. Let's see here. One thing I probably could do and should do, because this is such a long leg, is load some winds. So let's go to legs, route data, wind request. Give it 30 seconds. I've already pre-downloaded my winds from SimBrief via their downloader, so PMDG should be able to load them shortly here. Hopefully get a message in another 30 seconds or so. There we go, wind uplink ready. Yep. So I can load it, and now instead of 265 at 59, it's going to vary across the length of our route here. That looks good. Execute, and that'll give us a recalculation for our arrival into Toronto today. Toronto 1929, and 1,800 miles to go anyways. 10.5 in the tank. So the question becomes, if I bump up the cost index today with some surplus fuel in the tanks, about 4,000 surplus, can we get there faster? And it's not that I am necessarily a big fuel waster, but it's just a stream and we want it to be a reasonable length of time. The only reason I'm flying only the 737 is because I'm only flying my flights in a pilot's life, and that is all that WestJet flies, is the 737. If we go to, I don't think I can do anything else, can I? No, I can't show you anything else. But so when you're in a pilot's life, you know, you're working for a certain airline, you're stuck flying the types that airline flies, and WestJet only owns 737s. That's not strictly true now. They also own Dreamliners as well. That being said, I don't have a Dreamliner, so I'm not going to be flying that. So that's the reason why. It's not that I necessarily don't like other airplanes. If you go back and have a look at the previous seasons on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, you'll see that I did fly a variety of other airplanes. I flew the Dash 8 for a couple of seasons, and before this season I was working at Air Transat, so I was flying a mix of the 37, the 320, and the 330, depending on what the leg demanded and what I felt like doing. So it was kind of nice like that. It is a little bit monotonous, perhaps, flying the 737 all the time, but it's a good airplane. WestJet has a really interesting route structure. That's the reason why I kind of stuck with WestJet right now. Out of all the airlines I was offered, it was definitely the one that had the most interesting route structure. Visited a variety of airports, a lot of which are already in my scenery library. And there he goes. Thank you very much, sir. Transition, set standard. Yeah, so because they are... Yeah, that's the main reason why I selected WestJet, is because it was an airline that had probably the most destinations that I had scenery for, and it had hubs that I had scenery for especially. So that's why I kind of selected WestJet this time around, so hence I'm stuck flying the 737. I don't know how long I'm going to stick with it. Probably more than one season, because I like the variety of routes, so I'm probably going to stick with them for a couple of seasons. It depends also on what other jobs I can find in the job market when I unlock this eventually. I can't do this right now because we're flying, and once we're flying, I can't do anything else, which just kind of annoys me a little bit about SimBit World. I like the software a lot because it's fairly simple, intuitive, straightforward, but the fact that I can't do anything else while I'm flying, and when you're flying long-haul flying, you need other things to occupy your brain, so I would love to be able to go and talk about the job market, look over the job market maybe, see what other flights I've got coming up. I can't do anything else in this while the flight is logging, unfortunately. That's a little frustrating. So yeah, I would consider checking the job market as this flight schedule rotation ends, and see if there's any other good jobs out there. And I'm not... Somebody asked me why I don't fly in Europe. I'm not biased against other countries per se. I live in Canada, so I like Canada. I think, you know, I'm familiar with the procedures and the airlines and everything in Canada. At the lower end, I don't have a lot of the scenery that the American airlines serve. If I pick the Canadian airlines, I have a lot of that scenery already. The American airlines, not so much. So it's a little bit harder for me to get, you know, to find a route, a schedule that will hit up most of these airports that I have in my scenery. And that's also the reason why I don't really favor Europe, is because I don't have a whole lot of European scenery, and at this point now, I'm not going to be spending a lot of money on more new scenery in P3D. So until, you know, for the time being, I'm going to be probably still very North American centric. The transition going forward will probably be more likely when there become good airplanes in Microsoft Flight Simulator and I can fly that. I might consider flying in Europe, because then even the default scenery is not bad. But I probably... P3D is, to me, it's not a dead platform, but it's a platform that is the sun is beginning to set on, at least as far as I'm concerned. So I'm probably not going to be investing too much more money into this platform. There's a beautiful 737. The split wingtips. And it's funny, when you look at these things on the ground, the split wingtips are huge. I wonder how hard would you have to roll on takeoff to scrape the tip of that wingtip on the ground? Because right now it looks like it's fairly far up in the air, but that's because, of course, the wings are generating lift and they've flexed upwards. When they're not generating lift, when you're taxiing on the ground and they're kind of drooping a little bit low, these wingtips look like they get awfully close to the ground. I guess that's the thing, is during the takeoff roll they would flex upwards, so you could roll a fair bit more. But just when you see them on the ground, they look like they're so close to the ground. here comes the sun. And we probably don't need the weather radar too much anymore, so we can probably switch to terrain mode as we cross the Rockies. That's probably the best idea. Have that terrain up there. And have some stations drawn on there just for some sense of place, a little bit of situational awareness, and we're on our way. You know, and it's funny as I'm sitting here flying this Boeing away from the West Coast, and I was just watching a video the other day about the Boeing factory in Everett, which is not where they make the 737s. The 737s are made in Renton, but all the large airplanes are made in Everett, Washington, just on the north side of Seattle, and that factory is the largest enclosed space in the world. The size of it is just phenomenal. When you need to build the largest airplanes in the world, you need a large factory. It's absolutely huge factory. Apparently, when they were originally building it, because that factory was built when they designed the 747. So when the first generation of 747s came out, of course the factory that they had at Renton couldn't build them, and the runway at Renton probably could barely have supported a takeoff from a 747, especially even just the 100 series. So they had to find a new place. So they found Everett, Washington. They found an airport called Painfield with a nice long runway, a lot of empty land, and they built a huge, absolutely mammoth factory there. So if you ever go and Google it or watch some videos on it, it's absolutely mammoth. It is the largest enclosed volume, the largest enclosed volume in a building anywhere on the planet, because it is just, in order to manufacture these airplanes, it's absolutely huge. The factory is over a kilometer from one end to the other, just one building. And this is not just the complex, this is one building is over a kilometer from one end to the other. Boeing actually supplies bicycles for their employees, so if you need to get around the factory, they just have like stands of bicycles all at various locations throughout the factory. You just grab a bike, ride to where you need, and leave a bike behind, because it's just so big. To walk from one end to the other, could take you 20-30 minutes easily. It's just absolutely huge. And so there's a story anyways about when they were originally building the factory, and the 747, and of course nothing ever gets built on schedule, so they were trying to get the 747s out the door, but the factory wasn't even done. So they were building airplanes in a factory that wasn't even completely finished yet. They hadn't finished the whole size of the building. So apparently at one point the building only had 3 walls, and they were still kind of building outwards in the 4th direction, trying to finish the last parts of the factory while they're still making airplanes inside. And then of course, being the West Coast, they get a fog that rolled in. And with all the activity inside the factory, this fog actually rolled in and started to obscure what was happening inside the factory, and it actually started raining inside the factory because of the amount of moisture in the air inside this enclosed space. It just crazy, the kind of things that you would do, and of course that doesn't make it very convenient for building airplanes. But they were obviously in huge pressure to sort of get the first airplanes out the door, and well, the rest, as they say, is history. I mean, it was a gamble at the time. The amount that they spent on building that factory and developing that airplane was about 3 times the value of the company at the time. And if the 747 had not succeeded, Boeing would not exist today. They gambled the company on that airplane, and it was a gamble that paid off. That airplane is now one of the best-selling, longest-running long-haul aircraft. That aircraft has been in continuous production in one version or another for now almost 40 years, and finally, 40 years later, the production is finally ending. The 380 can't hold a candle to the 747. They were not even in production for 10 years before they shut the production line down, while the 747s were still being produced. The Queen of the Skies is an apt description, and I'm always going to think of it that way. The 747 is definitely one of the most beautiful airplanes to grace the skies above this planet. Little baby brother here, the 737, was not too bad either, taking away all those MAX debacles, of course. Had the privilege of actually going and flying on a MAX airplane the other day, in the back, as a passenger. Didn't even realize it was a max when I got into it. I guess it gets so sort of just into my mode when I sit in the back of an airplane. I don't even really focus too much on what's happening at all. And sat down, and it was only after a little while I noticed that, hey, the cabin in here looks really new. I wonder what kind of airplane this is, because you know, it had 3-on-3 seating, but it was a brand new, like brand spanking new cabin on the inside, new seats, the new lighting system with the kind of the fading pastel colors and everything. And it took me a little while, and then I finally looked down at the safety card, and then I noticed that, oh, we're sitting in a 737. Didn't think too much about it. If there's an airplane that has been overanalyzed, it's probably now the MAX. The MAX has been, more than any other airliner, probably been analyzed to death now. So there were a lot of design compromises made in the original MAX, but I think at this point, it is probably one of the safest airplanes now ever built, because of the length and depth of the analysis that went into the whole design of that airplane after the 2 crashes. It was unfortunate that it took 2 crashes to get to that point, and it really should never have come to that. It should have been well designed to begin with. But I certainly personally have no qualms about sitting in the back of a MAX airplane anymore. It's been reviewed and analyzed so many times. Anyways,
1011.
there we go. We're already almost up at cruise here. Alright, so we were originally going to have a look at this. So 1928 and 10.6. So what if we play with the performance a little more here? What if we round the cost index up to 75? Is that going to make much of a difference here?
Would you like to fasten seatbelt sign to auto?
No.
Roger.
Take it off. I don't like the auto mode. I'd rather have it. Alright, so that saved 5 minutes and really didn't take too much more fuel. Let's do one more time. If I bump it up to 150, it's probably not going to make too much of a difference now. 1921, 9.8. Now we're only talking a couple of minutes, and we're starting to really cut to the fuel here. So we'll leave it at there. That's probably good anyways. That'll still get us there pretty quickly, relatively speaking. It is still going to be a long stream today. So there we are. We're leveling cruise. We're on our way, guys. Not too much has happened in the aviation, well, in the flight sim community in the last week or so. Microsoft Flight Simulator delayed their update 3 again, but now I think it seems like they've really kind of honed in on a date that they're going to stick to this time. I think they found a date that they are happy with, that they're going to live with. They said they've locked it in there, so it'll be nice to see the next update come down. Things have improved over time. There's another, what did I notice the other day that had improved in Flight Simulator that had not, actually, yeah, the one thing that actually did improve in Flight Simulator that I hadn't noticed, but I just noticed it the other day. For those of you flying online using Microsoft Flight Simulator and using vPilot or whatever client, you may have, of course, noticed in the past that you had problems with the transponder not being connected to Microsoft Flight Simulator properly, and vPilot not properly interfacing with Microsoft Flight Simulator. So when you turn on the transponder in Microsoft Flight Simulator, it wouldn't turn on here, or if you press the ident button in Microsoft Flight Simulator, it wouldn't work here. Well, I'm happy to say that I'm not sure if this was an updated Flight Simulator or vPilot, because vPilot had a few updates pushed over the last little while, but it seems like the Mode C button now works with Microsoft Flight Simulator. If you turn on a transponder in Microsoft Flight Simulator, this Mode C button now appears to work properly. It seems to be properly linked now. I tried the ident function as well. That did not seem to work. So it seems like we're making baby steps, but we're getting some better integration. So if you turn the transponder on in Microsoft Flight Simulator, apparently it seems like it now is going to work in vPilot and properly activate in vPilot, which is just nice. It's nice to have these little steps forward, these little steps up. You know, nothing revolutionary, but little by little, Flight Simulator is becoming more and more tolerable, more and more usable. Jamie asks, when should you Squawk Ident? Oh, that's a very good question. When someone tells you to. What the ident function does, first of all, what the ident function does is it sends a special little signal on top of your transponder code that goes out to the radar system, and it sends out for about 6 to 12 seconds, and it makes your target flash on the radar screen. So this is useful when a controller is trying to figure out who specifically you are on the radar screen. To differentiate you from other aircraft. So, you know, there's tons of aircraft popping up on the screen, and just to make sure that you are who they think you are, they ask you to Squawk Ident, and it makes them flash on the screen. So basically, any time they ask you to do it is the time you should Squawk Ident. I see a lot of people do this. They tune the transponder and they press ident. Like if you're asked to squawk a new code, squawk 0123. They'll tune in 0123 on the transponder, blah 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 blah. But then they'll also press the ident button at the same time. Don't do that unless you're told to. Some controllers will use that as a technique to help them identify aircraft, but that depends on the situation. In Canada, in general, if you change a code and the code change is correct, that's considered enough to identify you. You don't have to squawk it in at the same time. So don't squawk ident if you're not told to. If they don't use the word ident, don't press the ident button. The other time you may, and this is kind of this is not something you would do very much, but if you really need to get a controller's attention for some reason, you could try squawking ident to try and get their attention. It's not something that would often work, but it is possible to get someone's attention to your target by squawking ident, but generally you'll want to raise them on the radio because you want to tell them why. The only reason you might do that is maybe if you had an emergency, but if you tune in the emergency transponder code of 7700, that's going to make your target turn red and look very different and distinct anyway. So if there's an emergency, you would just squawk 7700. There's no need to ident usually unless you're told to. The second reason why ATC may ask you to squawk ident is if they're having trouble communicating with you by voice and they need some kind of acknowledgement that you can hear them. So if you, for some reason, your microphone stopped working, the transmit function for some reason on your radio stopped working, or maybe you're on the wrong frequency, in which case, of course, that's not going to help very much. But if for some reason you can't talk but you can still hear them, they may ask you to ident to acknowledge something. I had this happen once when we were on short final and the radio suddenly stopped working, stopped being able to transmit. Tower cleared us to land. They didn't hear a readback. They cleared us to land again. Didn't hear a readback. I was trying to read it back, and the radio was for some reason not transmitting. So Tower was pretty smart. The third time they said, I can't remember what the call sign was, but they said blah blah blah. Your runway cleared to land runway 08. If you hear this, squawk ident, because the controllers can then see the radar screen. If they see the ident come on, they know you've heard them, and that you've acknowledged the clearance, and you obviously have a communication issue. When you're on short final is not the time to be looking down and trying to troubleshoot the radios. So that's another thing that they might do. Sometimes, yeah, if you're out in the en route airspace and perhaps they give you a new frequency to try, but you're so far away that your transmitter's weak and they can't hear you, they may just say, contact so-and-so center on 111.23 and acknowledge with an ident. So you'll hear that sometimes. If they can't get some kind of a voice response from you, they may ask you to squawk ident to indicate to acknowledge that you've heard a transmission. Do I enjoy controlling or flying more? That is an excellent question. I like them both in different ways and different times. It kind of depends on the mood I'm in too. That's a really tough one. Just to go back a little bit, like I used to fly flight sims 30 years ago. I had Microsoft Flight Simulator version 4 and 5, and they both were great, and I got out of them for a long time. And then I discovered VATSIM, 10 years ago, and I got online. I started controlling there because I just enjoy the challenge of trying to manage traffic and make efficient use of airspace, and I enjoy that challenge. And so I got into it 10 years ago. I didn't get back into flight simulation until about 4 years ago. It wasn't until I'd been controlling on the network for about 6 years before I bought FSX on a whim on a Steam sale for like, I think it was $7 or something, just to try it out and have a little bit of fun with it. And that got me back into it. I really don't know which I enjoy more. I enjoy them both differently. Sometimes it's nice to sit back, relax, fly the airplane, look around, watch the scenery go by. You know, if I want to have a bit more of a relaxing day, I'll pick up an airplane and I'll go flying, because I generally find that's a bit more relaxing. You're dealing with maybe one controller at a time. You're dealing with one issue, one airplane. With controlling, it's very much multitasking. So if I'm in the mood for a challenge, then I'll pick up, I'll log in as a controller for a couple of hours and I'll do some controlling. I'll try to pick a busy airport and deal with that. I won't say I enjoy one more than the other, because it's not really fair to say I do. I like them both. I love flying airplanes. Flying airplanes is tons of fun. You know, the technical mastery, knowing that you have full control of your machine, that you understand what's happening and why it's doing what it's doing and how to make it do what you want to do. I love that. But I also love the dynamic, quick thinking, complex problem solving nature of ATC. There's no 2 days, you know, online as a controller are ever going to be the same. No 2 days as a controller are ever going to be the same. Everything's going to be a little bit different, whether it be different pilots, different runway configurations, different problems, different airplanes arriving at different times. It's always going to be different. It's always going to be unique, and you're going to come up with different ways to solve that challenge and do it efficiently. That's the real challenge once you get really into it. The first 6 months to a year you're controlling, you're just trying to get over it and trying to just understand what's happening and talk to the pilots and make plans that work. When you get past that first year or so, then you start to go into the how can I make this the most efficient operation possible? How can I get these airplanes to their destination in the quickest way possible? And you're trying to find those efficiencies, not by sacrificing safety, but just by simply offering little shortcuts here and there, direct to this point, direct to that point, trying to time descents and just right, trying to resolve conflicts in ways that cause minimal delays to everyone. So that becomes, I think, the joy of a job well done after the first year or two, is really trying to maximize that efficiency. Only have 3,200 hours logged in 3 years. 4 years, I guess, almost 5 years. Yeah, that's still 3,200 hours logged is a lot of time logged in that much time, considering it's a hobby. You know, obviously when you're younger, you usually have a lot more time to dedicate to your hobbies. As you become an adult and have to work 40 hours a week and take care of a family after that, finding time for hobbies becomes a little bit more challenging, to say the least. So I have not logged 3,200 hours on of flying anyways in the VATSIM network, that's for sure. Although you're making me curious now. I still have more controller hours than flying hours, but it's kind of catching up. I tend to do more flying overall because it's easier to sort of find some time, and also it's easier to do it in such a way that you can be online for a couple of hours, step away for 20 minutes here and there. With controlling, you can't step away for any length of time. That's the other thing too. So controlling, you are very much in the moment all the time. If you step away, it's for 2 minutes, and that's it, and then you're right back into it. Whereas with flying, you can step away from the flight deck for 10 or 15 minutes easily, and come back, and especially as long as the autopilot is not disengaged, then you're going to be fine. And certainly you're not going to be lost in the VATSIM world most of the time. You can ask the controller for permission to step away, or you may be in uncontrolled airspace, and you may just step away for that time. I'm just going to have a quick glance at my vPilot here, or my VATSPY here, but I don't see anybody else online until we get to Toronto right now. We're kind of cutting through Seattle airspace right now. I could probably actually bring this up like this, so you guys can share in the joy of it here. Go to the live map with VATSIM controllers indicated on there. There we are. So right now we are in Seattle Center airspace. Seattle Center will end somewhere right about there. And you can see, then we're going to basically pass through Minneapolis, through a small corner of Cleveland and into Toronto. Toronto's online right now. Don't know if they're going to be online when we get there, though. It's going to be a while still. Unfortunately, I can't look at my stats on VATSIM right now because the load on the VATSIM server is too high, so I'm not going to be able to look that up. But I know I have more hours controlling than flying. I think I have about 2,500 hours controlling, something in that neighborhood. Probably about half that flying online on VATSIM right now. Now, as a controller on VATSIM, there's one thing that always kind of gets to me, and I'm going to bring it up now just for a conversation topic, and that is, I've got a list of 5 pet peeves, things that pilots do that really kind of annoy controllers, not just myself, controllers in general. And if anybody out there, you know, is flying on the VATSIM network and you recognize any of these behaviors in yourself, please, you know, kind of see if you can improve upon them. You know, these are the kind of things that drive controllers to the drink, to say the least, and you know, make people not want to control. So one, and it's a little pet peeve, and it's not number 5 on my list. It's a little pet peeve. It really doesn't do any harm, but it's just one of those things that it's a VATSImism. I don't know where it came from. For some reason, it's so common on VATSIM and doesn't exist in the real world. And that is this whole concept of requesting clearance as filed. And all the time, aircraft do it. You know, American 123 request clearance to New York as filed. And it's just such a redundant phrase. If you file the flight plan, that's the route you want to fly. That's what the controller assumes you want to fly. You don't need to tell him that you want to fly the route as filed, because if you bother to file it, then that's the route you want to fly. It's common sense. Otherwise, it's a redundant phrase. So that's exactly it. It's a redundant phrase. It just drives me nuts. And nobody in the real world says that. I don't know where this little VATSImism came from. And I swear half the pilots on VATSIM do it now. But nobody in the real world ever says, I would like clearance to such and such airport as filed. They just simply say, request IFR clearance to wherever. And if they filed a specific route, that's the route they want to try and fly. If ATC can accommodate that, they probably will. If there's a preferred route, they'll switch them to the preferred route. Ditto on VATSIM. If you file a route, we're going to try and see if we can allow that. If there's perhaps a better route we can come up with, we'll talk to you as a controller. We'll ask you, hey, can you accept this? And look it over. If that's the case, look it over and see if you can. If you can't, no worries. We will generally, controllers in VATSIM will do almost anything they can to accommodate people within reason, without affecting other people's enjoyment of the network. If it's really busy and the routes need to be stuck to, kind of the preferred routes need to be adhered to, then that's a different story. But generally when it's quiet, I have no problem with unusual routes. I may ask a pilot, hey, are you able this route? It's a little bit better, it's a little bit faster, it's a little more direct. But if they're not able to, for whatever reason, if they can't reprogram their FMC because it's Microsoft Flight Simulator and you can't really pre-program it once you've loaded it, or you just are not sure how to do it, that's fine. I can usually deal with anything you've got. But it's just funny, this as filed phrase. I don't know where it ever originated from. It's not realistic. Nobody in the real world ever says that. My number 4 pet peeve, and again, it's not a big deal, but it's direct. Just request IFR clearance from New York to LaGuardia. Direct. Alright, sorry about that. My number 4 pet peeve is just people who file direct for a long flight, especially. You know, sitting in JFK, request clearance to London Heathrow via direct. Like, are you really going to fly 4,000 miles without a single waypoint? And controllers are going to have a problem with that, because we need at least a few points defined so we can kind of have a point to kind of aim you at. when you depart the airport, so we can give you direct to somewhere, and it just provides a little bit better processing for our routing as well. So that is very hard to deal with sometimes. So yeah, file direct, it, you know, put a little bit of effort into the flight planning process. It doesn't have to be crazy complicated, but even, you know, Flight Simulator has a built-in route generator that will just pick some fixes out of space along your route and kind of generate a route that way, and you can file that. You can, there's dozens of different ways of coming up with flight plan routes if you're unsure how to do it. Of course, SimBrief, as always, is a fantastic tool. It'll generate routes between almost any two airports out there. If you don't want that, there's tons of other standalone applications. Little Nav Map will generate routes. FS Navigator. You can even go to places like FlightAware. You can even go to places like FlightAware and type in, you know, a routing, CYVR-CYYZ, and it will come up with real-world flights. You can steal a routing from a real-world flight. You may not understand how to file it and fly it, but you can come up with it. But there is a filed route here. Wacom Jet 534, IWAC, Dick, Green Bay, Eisenman, Newber 4. So, like, there's ways to come up with it. So, yeah, that whole filing direct thing, you know, if it's a short flight, sure. You know, if it's a 100-mile flight, 150-mile flight, there may not be any good waypoints or anything in between. But, yeah, that's one that bugs me. Just file direct, just a little bit of laziness, and I will gladly point people in the right direction to help them find a good flight plan. It's not so much the short flight plans, but when you're filing an 8-hour flight and you file it direct. Oh boy, does that annoy. Number 3 on my list of pet peeves of pilots do while they're on the VATSIM network is being away from the keyboard for 2+ hours and not coming back to check on your flight periodically. And that is a violation of the VATSIM Code of Conduct, but that's not. But it's a bit of a pain when you log on as an en route controller and you have an airplane fly the length and breadth of your airspace, and they're on your frequency for 2+ hours, and you send them a number of attempts to get their attention, and no answer for 2 hours plus. It is not. It happens way too often, and I understand. Like today, like I'm probably going to step away from this flight deck for a period of time because there's not a lot going on. There's not a lot of controllers between me and my destination. Okay, great, but check in once in a while. And not once every 30 minutes, every 15 to 20 minutes at least. Check in on your airplane, see what it's doing, see where it is, and because you never know when you're going to be in conflict with somebody, and there might be a controller out there trying to get a hold of you, trying to resolve that conflict, trying to get you to turn 10 degrees to the left or right just to avoid hitting another airplane, maybe go up or down a little bit to avoid hitting another airplane. If you can't do that, if you can't come back every 15 minutes or so to at least glance at your airplane, glance at the radio channel, see if there's anybody trying to get a hold of you, then just disconnect. It doesn't do anybody any harm to disconnect. You can reconnect at any point in time when you get closer to your destination, when you can sit down in front of the computer and focus on flying again. But if you're not going to be focused on the radio and being ready to communicate with somebody, just because there was nobody there 5 minutes ago doesn't mean a controller's not going to log in. And I've controlled some large airspace, and I've watched airplanes sail through it for hours without talking to me, and I'm just thinking to myself, why are you even logged into VATSIM if you're not going to communicate when there are people here? Number 2 on my list of pet peeves of VATSIM pilots is unexpected turns. And this happens a lot, and Toronto is probably the #1 place where that happens. It's there are SIDs there that have RNAV routings in them, but the initial part of the SID is a vector, and there's lots of places. Oftentimes, at the end of a star, there will be a vector, and you're expected to fly that heading if you haven't been given anything else while you wait for ATC to find room to slot you onto the final approach. Likewise with the departures. If there's a vector on the departure, it's because ATC has other considerations, perhaps traffic, perhaps noise. They need you to stay in a certain place, moving in a certain direction until they are able to get you to that turn on course. And if I had $1 for every time I've seen someone depart Toronto and just turn on course, even though the SID requires you to fly runway heading, but they just turn religiously towards that first fix after on the RNAV routing, and that's not right. It's improper. It puts you perhaps in front of another airplane, another runway. It puts you in conflict with the traffic. Don't make any turns in the VATSIM world that aren't authorized by ATC, that aren't part of your routing. I've seen it all the time too. When people reach the end of the downwind on the star, they just start turning towards the final approach course. It's like, if there's ATC online, don't worry, we've got the situation in hand. We're going to get you turned there. If we're not turning you before you reach the end of that downwind course, it's probably because there's some other traffic in the way. If you start turning randomly, you're going to put yourself into somebody else's path. And that really brings me to my number one pet peeve of VATSIM pilots, and it's not everybody, but there are plenty of them out there that do this. My number one pet peeve is pilots that just don't read the charts. Pilots that just program their FMC and assume that everything is hunky-dory, and they just engage LNAV at 400 feet and they're on their way. And that's not how aviation works. This FMC here is a great box. It's meant to assist you in doing your job as a pilot. Your job as a pilot is not to program the FMC. Your job as a pilot is to fly the charts. So, perfectly good example here. So let's see here. So Toronto, and I'm going to use Toronto as an example because it comes up all the time. And here's the SID. Alright, and I haven't got any of these programmed in, but I'll just pick one pick the first one here. So we have the end-call departure. So these are the departures in Toronto. And this is your job as a pilot, is to do this. So 06 left, unless otherwise assigned by ATC. Climb heading 057 to 1,000 feet. Continue climb heading 057 as assigned. Expect radar vectors to mobile or as assigned and proceed via the depicted route. So off of 06 left, you climb straight ahead 057, and ATC will tell you when it's appropriate for you to turn, based on their traffic load, based on noise abatement, based on everything else. It's not take off here and immediately go to the first fix because there's a fix in your flight plan. So this right here, this chart, this is the ANCOL for departure. It's not whatever's programmed in your FMC. That's not the ANCOL for departure. That is here to support you and help you fly the ANCOL for departure. But it's so important that you read this and understand what this says. And if you don't understand it, if you have a question, ask the controllers. They'll gladly clarify anything you want. They'll gladly answer questions because they'd like to see you fly the departure procedure correctly, because it helps make their lives easier if you're not turning immediately towards another airplane when you depart. But so many people will program this in, and they will see that there's a no leg. They'll see this vector leg, and they'll be like, "Oh, I have to delete all the vectors. I have to immediately go direct to every fix, or I have to take off in LNAV mode." You don't even have to take off in LNAV mode. A lot of aircraft types don't take off in LNAV mode. A lot of aircraft types, they take off on a vector SID like this, where it says maintain heading 057. Guess what? We depart in heading mode. That's what it's there for. So that is my biggest pet peeve with VATSIM pilots, and I'm always really happy to have VATSIM pilots around and help to educate them, but guys, read the charts. This here's Navigraph. Obviously, this is a paid subscription. There are free charts out there on the internet. Every ATC organization on VATSIM will publish a link to charts, free charts available for their users, for their pilots. So I don't have the chart would never be a good enough excuse, because you can always get it for free. There's nowhere where you have to pay money for it. So even if you don't want to pay money for Navigraph, there's free charts available. The key is read that chart, understand what it's telling you, and make sure that you fly what it says. Use the FMS to help you, but don't assume that just because you loaded that departure in the FMS that it's going to fly it correctly. Understand what the chart is telling you and fly that. Fly heading 057. If I see the vector leg 057 in the FMC, great. Then I can fly in LNAV. If I don't see it, if I delete a leg in there, I have to fly it in heading mode. The key is that it's not that I have to let the FMC fly it, it's that I have to make sure that the airplane does what is published on the chart. The FMC is just there to help you, but it doesn't do everything for you. In some cases, you may need to do some things manually. You may need to fly in heading mode for a period of time. So please, for the love of God. And it's not everybody. There's plenty of people that do it properly, but there's plenty of VATSIM pilots out there that as long as I program the FMC, I'm okay. That's not the case. Read the chart. It's so frustrating as a controller sometimes to see everybody turn on departure. And there have been days where you have 20 departures in a row and they all make a turn right after departure towards that first fix, even though the chart says, and even though the FMC, if you program it correctly, actually does the same thing, but people are obsessed with removing low links. No links are in there for a reason. It's a vector leg with a no link because the path is not defined. The path will be defined by the controller. The controller will get you there. Anyways, that's my rant about some things that bug me as a VATSIM controller, because I love being a VATSIM controller, but I see the same mistakes over and over again, and I just feel like so many people are not learning over time. So I try to help people and push them in the right direction, but you guys have got to help yourselves a little bit too. I hope I didn't offend too many VATSIM pilots now. My VATSIM rating, I have an I3 rating. I am an instructor on VATSIM as well as a controller, so I teach people how to control as well, which is why sometimes it frustrates me to see pilots not doing what they're supposed to do, because then I have to help teach the controllers to react to that. And it's funny, it brings up another interesting point about VATSIM. Why is it so hard to be a controller on VATSIM? Why are the qualifications, the requirements for controllers on VATSIM so stringent? And at the end of the day, the answer is because the requirements for pilots are not. Anybody can log in and be a pilot on VATSIM. You just have to take like a really, really short exam, apply to take the really short exam, and you can become a pilot in VATSIM with a pretty minimal level of experience and understanding of aviation. And that's fine, that's cool, that's great. Bring more people in and let's have some fun. But as a result, the controllers have to be very, very experienced, very skilled in order to deal with that, in order to deal with a mix of skill levels from the pilots. If you had controllers that had very, very low skill levels and pilots that had very, very low skill levels working together, you'd have a disaster. Chaos would reign on the network. So because the standard for pilots on VATSIM is so low, the standard on controllers has to be pretty high. And I take issue with anybody that says otherwise. There are forces that are really pushing to make the controller training standards lower in VATSIM, and I really resist any effort to do that, because again, it comes down to, as long as the pilots are able to join with very minimal skill and knowledge, you're going to need very skilled and knowledgeable controllers to handle the other end of the equation, to be able to manage those people who have a difficult time, who don't understand their airplanes very well, that don't understand aviation very well. And that's fine, because it's a great chance for everyone to learn. And I love helping people learn along the way and giving them information and resources to help them learn. But yeah, I personally would not want to see any dilution in the skill of ATC on the VATSIM network, because we still have plenty of new pilots, especially with Microsoft Flight Simulator. The number of pilots flying Microsoft Flight Simulator on VATSIM is quite large, and it's still lasting. At first there was nobody, because of course there were problems with the vPilot client right off the bat, but once it got working, lots of people quickly got into it. It's still the case. There's way more VFR flying happening on VATSIM than there has been in 10 years. Lots of people are getting out there. You see lots of TBMs going around, Barons, Cessna 172s even flying around on the VATSIM network. The TBM, I have to say, is probably one of the most popular ones that people are using in Microsoft Flight Simulator, but it's not the only one. The citations are out there too. You can usually tell because they are not able to reprogram on the fly as well. That's usually the biggest way you can tell, is if you try to give them some kind of a change. A lot of the airplanes have issues with it. People are flying the A320 on VATSIM with Microsoft Flight Simulator. So there's a lot of people flying Microsoft Flight Simulator, and it's created a huge surplus of VFR pilots, which is great. It's a great challenge for the controller, something we have not seen in a long time. So it's great to see that happening now. But again, it goes down to, there's a lot of inexperienced people then running around on the network, and having experienced, skilled controllers helps manage all the relatively unskilled pilots. And again, I welcome the unskilled pilots at the end of the day, because the only way you get skilled is by practicing. So come on online and practice, and you'll get better at it for sure. But if we didn't have skilled controllers as well to help manage those, to help manage all these pilots, we would have real chaos on VATSIM. Well, it is awfully quiet out there on the network today. So I may take a little break for 20 minutes or half an hour or so here because I don't have too much else to talk about right now. So I may take about a half an hour break here. We've got, let's see here. We got about 3 hours till we reach top descent. We're not going to break for all that time. As I said, I may take about a... I may take a short break here though. And Jamie says, crazy to me how the controllers on VATSIM do their stuff. He would lose it. He would lose it. You know, there's days where even the best controllers lose it at the end of the day. You know, enough pilots who are unsure of what they're doing or just not listening at all can quickly wear on a controller's patience too. They're only human beings as well. They do it for a hobby. I enjoy the challenge of trying to organize a lot of traffic, but there's plenty of people who will say, you know what, I don't need stress during doing my hobby. And lots of people will eventually log off if they're getting too much stress. Lots of controllers will eventually log off if they feel like there's too much chaos. Nobody's really paying attention or doing what's asked of them anyways. You start asking yourself, why are you even here? Have I ever had a pilot fall asleep on me? I don't know. Probably. As I said in my list of pet peeves, I've had people gone on from my frequency. I've had people fly through my airspace for 2+ hours without a word. So they could be sleeping. They could be just, you know, playing video games, doing something else. Who knows? They could be out shopping for all I know, and they just left themselves connected to VATSIM for their cruise portion for 6 hours, which is, again, I've got no problem with that as long as you're going to come and check it periodically, because if somebody does come online, that's the thing, you have to be ready to come and sit in front of the computer if somebody does come online. And you need to communicate with them, and they're going to help you through their airspace. They may not need a whole lot from you, depending on where you are, but maybe they do. Maybe there are some conflicts at your altitude that they need to help you resolve, and if you're not there listening, then nobody's going to get no conflicts are going to get resolved. So I wouldn't be surprised if somebody fell asleep on me at some point. Alright, so I think I'm going to take a little break here for about 30 minutes or so here. I had someone trying to reach me by phone there, I think, so I'm going to go and return that call. But we will be back here online no later than 1700, and hopefully we'll find something else to chat about in that time. So in the meantime, guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you guys watching the stream. I hope you're enjoying it, learning something, and I will be back in probably about just over half an hour. If I can find my away screen, there it is. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will be back in a little bit. Alright guys, welcome back. Captain Nabs is back in the flight deck once again for continuing our flight here over to Toronto. Hopefully nothing untoward has happened since we left. Let's hop in that flight deck and have a quick look, because anytime you get out of the flight deck for any length of time, you really should have a quick look around just to make sure that everything is hunky-dory as you left it. First of all, I don't see any orange lights. That's always a good sign. No caution lights. How are we doing on fuel? We're at 20,600 here. 3.38 left in the main tank. So the main tank's going to be empty in about another, half an hour. And we'll have to make sure we're around to flick off those fuel pumps, because that is important in the 737. I was actually reading about this, and those center fuel pumps there have to be switched off once they are showing low fuel pressure, because if you leave them running for any length of time, apparently what happens is the pumps will eventually purge out all the fuel that's within the pumps, and they will not prime again when you turn them back on the next time. The only way then after that to get them to prime is for maintenance to actually get in there and actually manually force fuel into the pumps before the next flight. So apparently it's a maintenance item if you leave those on for too long with low fuel pressure light illuminated. You're talking on the order of like 5 minutes or so. It'll push all the fuel out of those fuel pumps, and it will and the pumps will not be able to prime the next time, even if the tank is full, because there'll be too much air stuck in the pump. So interesting little note I just learned about there on the fuel system for the 737. Otherwise, yeah, it doesn't look like too much is going on. We are still on our way. Airplane is configured the way it should be. We are still showing an arrival time in Toronto of 1924Z, 9.5 tons left when we get there. We got 48 knots behind us right now, still level 35,000. Oh, so far so good. Nothing much going on out there. Definitely crossing some snowy plains states here. If I zoom in a little bit, I might be able to get a better sense of where we are here. Alright, so Dickinson there. I think that's Cedar Rapids there. I would guess, I think we're over the Dakotas. Maybe we're still over Montana, but I think we're over the Dakotas. The only way to know for sure is to check with my Sim Toolkit Pro. It's loading. It's loading. Nope, it's dying. There it is. Took a little while to think about it. There it is. Oh, I am good. We are actually technically still over Montana, but that is the Dakotas, North Dakota, just ahead of us. We're going to enter North Dakota in about the next 1 to 2 minutes here by the looks of it. What's interesting is that this flight plan here, it seemed to miss a point here. Did I not put that in? Why is there a point here in my flight plan that I went sailing right past, apparently? Either something's in the wrong place, or maybe I put in the wrong waypoint. Change of plans, doing Amman to Montreal instead of the other way around. That's still a 9.5 hour flight. That'll put you arriving... Well, if you were to leave now, you might get there during like the evening North American rush. Good chance of getting some ATC in Montreal at that point. Yeah, so there we are. So we still got a long way to go here. We are basically, Sim Toolkit process, we're 42% of the way there. We're almost at the halfway mark, so we probably will take another break for meal break again in about a half an hour or so. 12 hours and 25 minutes. Well, if you leave now, you probably will still miss the evening rush hour in Montreal, unfortunately. No two ways about that. That little glitch there just made me remember something very interesting. I probably still have this on because we did this last flight and I have not played with it since. In the auto cruise menu, we have pause at top of descent on. Let's turn that off. We don't need to pause at top of descent because we are going to be watching this airplane throughout the whole flight. Royal Jordanian 269 S787. Are you flying the Quality Wings Dreamliner? Is that the Dreamliner you're using, or are you using Flight Simulator? That is probably one of the few airplanes that I'm interested in that is not in my hangar. And if they never had a sale, I probably would have picked it up on sale. For the full price, it's not... Yeah, for the full... And I'm assuming that you like it since you're flying it. For the full price, it's not a cheap airplane. It's probably worth it. I have so many airplanes in my hangar. The trouble is, like, I also have a... There's quite a few airplanes that I've bought that I don't even fly anymore. That I never seem to have the time to fly, so that's my first kind of concern with even adding another airplane to the hangar. I would like the Dreamwing. I think the Dreamliner. I think it would be. I think it would be a fun airplane to fly. You know, very interesting long hauler. A very different generation of airplanes. A totally new, advanced generation of airplanes. So very different. Probably would take a little bit of a learning curve to learn it, but I enjoy that challenge. I enjoy the learning curve, and especially if they can have realistic manuals. Absolutely money well spent, you say. Well, good to hear. I'm glad that you've gotten your fill out of it, because that's one of the big things too when you're spending money in these hobbies, is making sure that you're getting your money's worth too. I would say to this point I have probably just about gotten my money's worth out of the NGXU, out of the Queen of the Skies, out of the 777. I've flown all three of those a lot at various times, so I would say I've probably got my money's worth out of those. There's certain sceneries that I visit a lot that I've gotten my money's worth out of. Even Microsoft Flight Simulator, I bought the big package, and it wasn't cheap. I would say I've got my money's worth out of that. I have spent a lot of time in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Actually, now I'm curious. I have Steam on my other computer because it's loaded into Steam. We can look it up and we can find out exactly how much time have we spent on this here. If I could just do this, 1 second. So yeah, in, what has it been, 6 months since Microsoft Flight Simulator came out, I have had it running for 520 hours. Kind of blows you away a little bit. It's been a lot of time spent in Microsoft Flight Simulator, but again, also one that I feel is totally worth it. It's funny when you look at your Steam catalog and you look at the games you've played and the games you haven't, and which ones you've gotten your money's worth out of and which ones you haven't, because there are plenty of games in my Steam library that I thought I would play a lot that looked really interesting to watch videos. Then I started playing with it, I'm like, this really doesn't have the depth I was expecting, or just it was not fun for me. And I've got quite, my Steam catalog has quite a few of those in there. I'm generally a little bit cautious when it comes to spending money on games, and I won't usually go out and buy something on a whim. I'll usually spend quite some time watching videos, you know, playthroughs and whatnot of a game before I go and pick it up, because again, I like to feel like I know what I'm getting. I don't like to waste money, and I don't mind supporting good developers, but there have been a few games. There are a few games in my Steam library where I look at it and I say, I never really played that. It sounded like it was going to be fun, and I never really actually ended up playing with it. And then there's the other games at the other end of my catalog, where let's see here if I could just... Sorry, I'm just trying to sort this out here. I thought there was a way in my library. Yeah, there, to sort by hours played. And it's funny to compare the games that are at the top of that list and how many hours are into those games versus the games at the bottom of the list that barely have a couple of minutes into it, 18 minutes, 14 minutes, 34 minutes, versus the ones at the top of my list which have 800 plus hours in some of them. Hopefully those ones that I spent 800 hours in I paid a good amount of money for, and the ones that I only spent 14 minutes in I paid little to no money for. Hopefully. It's funny when you look even at the Steam catalog, how few games even make it to the 20-hour mark or the 50-hour mark. I have in my catalog only 14. I only have 15 games that have made it past the 50-hour mark. When I find a game I like, I really focus on it. Even games that pass the 10-hour mark, I only probably have about 30 or 40 games. I have 100 plus games in this catalog, and only 30 or 40 of them even pass the 10-hour mark. Which is a bit of a shame, because then that's probably money wasted. But, well, no, you can't get it back probably at this point if it's been longer than that. Yeah. It's funny how you find those few certain games and you play them over and over endlessly. That's the way I am with the games I like. One that's not in my Steam list, it is now, but it doesn't have an accurate count, is Satisfactory. I've spent hundreds of hours probably playing Satisfactory, but I played it originally on the Epic Game Store. And I don't know how many hours I played in that game in the Epic Game Store, but to look at the length of some of my saved games, some of the saved games are up to over 100 hours each. So yeah, definitely several hundred hours spent in that game. Yeah, at the end of the day I regret a little bit not having the 8.7, but at this point, like I said, I'm probably not spending money in the P3D platform anymore, so I think Quality Wings were talking about bringing the 8.7 to Microsoft Flight Simulator. I will gladly give it a good solid try in that simulator when the time comes. Now, what is that up there? Oh, that's that reservoir in North Dakota. Trying to zoom in enough to see it. Lake Sakawea. Lake Sakakawea? Huge reservoir. Huge. Storing up huge amounts of water for farming the Great Plains, I guess. Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought I read that the Quality Wing 787 is coming to 2020, so I will probably consider it in that platform. I just, at this point, this platform has treated me well for quite a few years now. Some of the airplanes for it are absolutely phenomenal, and that's why I won't let the platform completely die anytime soon, because I enjoy still flying these airplanes around. But with the scenery, when good airliners become available in 2020 with the scenery there underneath them, it'll be fantastic. I mean, this is not terrible. This is Orbex Orbex FTX Global and Global Vector combined, and it's not bad. And I think, yes, and Open Land Class North America, and it's pretty good. But you start to see the repetitiveness of it in places after a while. There's not as much variety as there could be. That's the thing with the satellite imagery. The variety just never ends. It's always different, and even the snow effects. I've got to say, I'm actually pretty impressed with the snow effects in 2020. I took off the other day from somewhere in Michigan. Yeah, somewhere in Michigan, and it was snowing like a beast out there, and the runway was snow covered. The clouds, the light was very dull and gray. They've done a great job of capturing a lot of that weather, the feel. Because when I start the sim every single time, I start it with clear skies because that's the only way to seem to get the live weather to work. And then as soon as I kick in the live weather, it's amazing how the tone of the color changes. It goes from like, oh, it's a bright sunny green, crisp, looks like a warm day, to all of a sudden it's just like a very kind of pale blah gray. And it's not just that the sky is turned gray, but it's just the color itself is very gray. Then when you're underneath those clouds, it's really, really well done. Some of those artistic effects are just, I'm impressed with how incredibly well done they are. Unfortunately, as I look at my Sim Toolkit Pro, we are not doing well for ATC. Toronto was online, they logged off. No real surprise there. If you're on, most controllers are not going to be on for 4 hours. So my hope is that we will get some afternoon controller logging in Toronto before too long. Maybe some of them are watching this stream right now, and will eventually provide us with some service when we get there. I was pretty happy to have some service departing Vancouver. That was a nice, pleasant surprise. I wasn't really expecting that, but we got it nevertheless, so that was good. It's already midnight for you. Yeah, you do the long haul flight now, and I guess you'll wake up in the morning and finish it. That's how I like to do a lot of my long hauls, because then I'm not occupying my one PC all day with a long haul flight. I tend not to do too many long haul daytime flights because I tend to want to use my PC for other things. My kids would like to come and game on it sometimes, so locking in a long haul flight for 8 to 10 hours during the daytime is not terribly practical these days, unfortunately. And it's funny, the last time I tried to do a bit of it wasn't really a long haul, but I ended up trying to do a bit of a humorous flight. I knew I had to go to work for a couple of hours during the day, so I thought, what the heck, I'll boot up a long flight in the 737 and finish it when I get back. And so I departed San Diego, got airborne, went to work, and instead of coming back 3 or 4 hours later, I came back 2 days later. So my airplane sat there at the top of descent. Fortunately, I disconnected from VATSIM before I went to work, but my airplane sat there at the top of descent in New York for 2 days before I finally got back and said, oh, look, it's still here. I guess I can finally land now. Don't often have single days of work where I can go to work and set up a long haul and come back home and finish it. But yeah, and that's what I would expect people to do. I would expect people to disconnect from VATSIM in cruise if they're not going to be able to attend to the airplane for any length of time. And I mean, I get it, not sitting staring at the screen for 30 minutes or for 6 hours like I'm doing right now. But be attentive to the airplane. Whatever else you're doing, check the screen every 15 minutes to see if anybody has sent you a message, if any ATC has sent you a message. You're not supposed to be away from the screen for more than 30 minutes. If you are, make sure that you are aware of what's going on the screen. There's different things you can do. You can walk by the screen multiple times. You can turn the volume up so you hear if anybody's trying to call you, or you can hear the beeps. You can use a remote desktop app is one of the things that I do. I have a remote desktop app running on this computer, and when I am around and about my house, I can check on my phone or on my tablet, and I can see if anybody has see what the status is of the airplane, see if anybody has sent a message in the window. So there's lots of things you can do to monitor the sim remotely when you're not in the flight deck, but just wandering away from the flight deck and disregarding the flight for 8 hours while you're still connected to the network is not acceptable. And yet I see people do it all the time. If you're going to step away, just disconnect. Nobody really minds. The controllers know if that's exactly the deal. When you're in cruise for 6 hours, people are not going to sit there for 6 hours. I don't know if I'll ever participate in Cross the Pond, because the idea of sitting there for the 8 hour flight in the flight deck monitoring ATC the whole time, I don't think I could do it. The only way I might consider it is if I could do it as a shared flight deck with somebody, and we could take it in shifts, monitor the flight deck. And we could each take like an hour break while the other person's sitting there monitoring the flight deck, and then, and switch it out a little bit. But also having someone to talk to at the same time would also be good. But just sitting there by myself, I don't think I could do it. More power to the guys that do it, and I love participating across the pond as a controller because it's a fantastic challenge. And it's great to see so many airplanes out there in the air, but I don't think I could sit there for the 8 hours. Even this one is long enough to make me antsy. 4 hours, it's enough to make me antsy. I want to, kind of get up and get other things done in my life while this flight is finishing. So what else? I was reading an article yesterday, a little biography on a little comedian that went viral several months ago. If you've never seen this video, this is absolutely hilarious. Let's see here. If you go to YouTube and you search for... Actually, you don't even have to go to YouTube. You can probably just Google it. But you want to search for explaining the pandemic to my past self. And it's an absolutely hilarious set of YouTube clips that was so on the nose. It's hilarious and yet so perfectly apropos for last year. And it actually ended up being a multi-part series that this comedian put together on her YouTube channel, and it's explaining the pandemic to my past self. Now, I'm not going to play it for copyright reasons, but I'll just show you, and I don't want to show you the ads that I'm watching either, but anyways. But yeah, if you get a chance, and I will post I'll try to post the link up here in the corner to the first one anyways. But it is just literally her sitting in her kitchen and explaining the pandemic to her past self. But it is so absolutely hilarious because the things that you thought were important once upon a time just fade away to nothing in the face of everything that happened in 2020. So this one was posted in April of 2020, and then just when you just thought, things couldn't get any crazier, she had to make a second one. That she made it, I guess this would have been in about July, and then a third one in I can't even remember. Yeah, like June, I think maybe. Maybe this one was in June, and then another one in August, and another one in October. And just, it's hilarious to think about the perspective of nobody could have foreseen what was going to happen. And just when we think it's we're hitting rock bottom in this world, it seems like things just seem to get worse. Things just seem to go from bad to worse. So if you've never seen those videos, absolutely hilarious. Explaining the pandemic to my past self. They went viral last year. 18 million views on the first one. 18.5 million views right now on that first one. And the other one's not quite nearly so many, but I still think the second and third one are still really good. The fourth one even got to a point where you just it's hilarious, it's cringeworthy, but it's because it's true. Most of us could not have conceived in 2019 what 2020 was going to be like, even in the first month of 2020, what the rest of the year would unfold like. And just when you think, things have hit rock bottom and society has hit a new low, it just seems to get even lower. And you've got to just laugh at it, because the world is a tough world out there. It's a frustrating, stressful world that we live in right now, and sometimes you just got to take it and just laugh at it. So absolutely fantastic set of videos. If you've never seen those, explaining the pandemic to my past self, absolutely hilarious. Alright, we're just going to do a little analysis here and make sure we do have all of our arrival restrictions in here first of all. Actually, before I even do that, I'm just going to pull up VATSIM really quickly and just see what the weather is doing in Toronto wind-wise, just so we can make an estimate on an arrival runway. And the winds are calm. Okay. So then if the winds are calm, then 248 is usually the runway that's in use. So we'll plan on that for now. I just want to make sure that the restrictions are in here so our top of descent prediction point is pretty accurate. Yeah, 250 at 11, so it is in there. And we do have a descent forecast as well as part of our, I think. We do not, actually. We got the en route winds, we didn't get the descent winds, so let's go ahead and put a descent forecast in there as well. Just to provide a more accurate top of descent point. Because I'm getting hungry now, so I'm going to probably think about stepping away for a meal break for a little while again. I know I only just came back. Unfortunately, there's not much happening in VATSIM. We're just sailing slowly eastwards, churning up the miles. And execute that. So now we have a descent forecast. Probably won't adjust our top of descent too much, but anyways, our top of descent is going to be just before 1900 Zulu. I'm not going to step away for that long because I want to have time to also set up for this arrival and everything. So just having a little debate with myself about how long would be a reasonable time to step away from the flight deck, because I don't like to step away for long periods of time, but at the same time, there really is not much happening out here. I mean, ATC is evolving. Denver Center did log on. Unfortunately, we're not going to be too close to them. I believe we're solidly into Minneapolis airspace now. So Minneapolis, and then eventually a little bit of Cleveland before we get to Toronto. Not much happening, though. Lots of people on the VATSIM network, though, this morning. It's or this afternoon, I guess now. It's 1,900, 1,700 people connected, so it's a busy morning, but it's mostly, again, it's because it's afternoon, evening in Europe on a weekday, so yeah, Europe is absolutely exploding. North America is still not too bad. There is definitely still a surplus of ATC compared to the past. And by surplus, I just mean there's a lot more controllers online now than there used to be in the past. And it's noticeable a lot of the organizations have bumped up their training throughout 2020 because there were lots of people sitting at home with nothing to do and wanted to take advantage of that time and do something fun. So there's been a lot more interest and progression in ATC, and certainly in Canada, VATSIM is very well represented. There is not necessarily a surplus of controllers in all the areas, but all the areas have training programs that are working well, that are seeing controllers continually progress. But there are some parts of Canada where there are almost more controllers than there are positions to staff. And in the evenings, some of these places, Toronto being top of the list, of course, because it's a popular place and there's been a lot of interest in it. There is almost every night a large number of controllers online in Toronto, just because there's so many people in training and trying to get some practice in and just trying to get online. But even some of the other places that in the past have been quieter, some of the other divisions that have been a lot quieter in the past, because there's not necessarily a lot of pilot activity within those divisions, even those ones are quite busy these days, online a lot, and there's quite a few events happening in Canada as well. So I'm happy to say that certainly in Canada, the perspective is that things are on a big upswing. There is more ATC available than ever. It's not online all the time because it's still when people can do it, and it's not the overnight hours or the early mornings so much. Although we did have ATC in Vancouver when we left, which was nice. But it's a huge upswing these last few months, and that's great to see. In the last year, pretty much, it has really reached that point where there's almost more controllers than there are positions online, and people have to almost relinquish positions to give other people practice. And that's a good problem to have, as I'm sure the VATSIM pilots will agree. Lots of controllers out there, so pilots, you're always welcome in Canada. There's tons of good controllers. They're not online 24/7, but we do provide good service when we're there, and we're definitely, the amount of time being spent online is going up. I was looking at my VATSIM stats before. I'm going to go ahead and try and look them up again here. It seems like it was being very slow. Now it seems to have done it. So just to view my full data, just as much self-interest, not so much to brag, but just for self-interest here. How much time have I spent on the VATSIM network? Because the answer is way too much. Whatever the answer is, it's probably too much. Wow. The answer is that my pilot hours are actually catching up pretty quickly to my controller hours now and are about to overtake them. I have spent almost 2,500 hours online as a controller and almost 2,300 hours online as a pilot now. in the last 10 years, which is probably just way too much. Especially the last year, because we've been home a lot. Curious to see how that breaks down. I've spent a lot more time online as a pilot in the last year than as a controller. 900 hours of flying versus 250 hours of controlling. Again, it comes down to controlling requires more continual focus, and sometimes I don't have the time for that, whereas I can start up a flight, and if there's no ATC online, I can step away for a while and come back to it as the situation dictates. Anyways, interesting. Way too much time online. It's the basic gist of it. Alright. Well, again, not much is happening. We're slowly trucking along eastbound. We're coming up to Fargo, North Dakota here in the next 100 miles or so there. But still a ways from our top of descent point. We are still about an hour and a half from our top of descent into Toronto. Not expecting too much to happen between now and then. We are slowly burning our fuel. We are going to run that center tank dry in the next 5 to 10 minutes. So let's see if we can find anything to do for the next 5 to 10 minutes while we wait for that center tank to run dry and we can turn off those pumps. See if there's anything interesting in the news in the flight sim world. TFDI is released some new renders of their MD-11. Now that's an interesting airplane to have as an option to fly, and that's to me probably one of the biggest things because it's a big cargo airplane nowadays, and that's something that I think is missing in a lot of cases is the more common cargo airplanes. FedEx, the backbone of the FedEx fleet are the 6.7s and the MD-11s and DC-10s. And those are ones that are not really available. Yes, Captain Sim has their 767 out there, but I'm really not a fan of the Captain Sim stuff. I find it's too simplistic for what I want to do. Really, really, really nice eye candy, but I don't know. I'm just not a fan of the Captain Sim stuff. It's just the systems are very simplistic, I find. So, not a big fan of that. I think there's a good market out there for a high quality 767. Although the 767s now, with the current airline shutdowns, are slowly being phased out of a lot of fleets. But they are still for cargo hauling, where the planes are already paid for, and so there's very minimal leasing expense, and the operating expenses are a little high, but the financing expenses are low. Nobody cares what the airplane, no cargo cares what the airplane looks like on the outside or on the inside, so the older airplanes are great for cargo hauling. So MD-11s, DC-10s, 6.7s, those are great cargo hauling airplanes. Like I said, the backbone of the FedEx and UPS fleets, and yet they're not commonly available in flight sims. And that's one that I think, that one's definitely going to be an interesting one. So, yeah, that's what's on the FS Elite website. Is you can go and look at some of those renders, but it definitely looks like a very highly detailed flight deck. Of course, they're always putting their best foot forward, but it looks like a very nice flight deck. Be interested to see that one when it comes out. It's unfortunate that it's coming out for the P3D platform, because again, I'm sort of phasing myself out of that one, but I hope that other people will enjoy it, and I certainly hope that that they'll consider then moving it over to Flight Simulator afterwards. Otherwise, even in the flight sim world, there's really not a whole lot of crazy news, just a lot of scenery updates these days. Lots of new scenery coming out. But the airplanes are just not coming from Microsoft Flight Simulator yet. Getting there. 400 pounds in the middle tank now. Should run dry in the next couple of minutes here. And we will eventually, that looks like the Is that the Mississippi coming up there? Back to my live map again, see where we are here. Just thinking about it. I surprised it when I asked it to, to show me the map. No, it's not the Mississippi yet. The Mississippi will be on the other side of Minneapolis, which we're going to pass Minneapolis before too long. That next waypoint is just a little bit before Minneapolis, so we're going to get to Minneapolis soon, but not there yet. £300. Just waiting for those pumps to run dry, and then we're going to step away again. And we will be back for the top of descent, so probably at about... it's going to be probably about 1830, 1840, something in that range. We'll be back for it about an hour from now. Unless some ATC shows up. If we get some ATC, we'll come back before that, but I don't see any ATC really showing up here. But you never know. You never know on VATSIM. It's one of the things I love about it is people just give the time they have. What have we got to go still? 852 miles to go. Starting to pick up that tailwind now. 71 knots behind us. It's getting there. Funny the gradient on the sky up here too. It's almost like we're flying in a cylinder with a dark roof. It's okay when you get most of these sort of side perspectives, but when you start to see that that's above you there, it's a weird gradient. It's just a fixed sky color up there. Interesting. Never really noticed that before. There we go. Here's the first pump to low pressure. 100 pounds left. As soon as we get the low pressure light, we should cycle the pump off. £50. Well, I'm just waiting for that to kick in. I can also switch to Toronto and start editing this clip a little bit. It may change, but based on what we think we're going to do anyways, we can start putting some charts up here. Good enough for now. Down to that less 10 pounds, it's still not going off. There are apparently 0 pounds in the center tank, but we still have not triggered the low pressure light on that right hand pump. Begs the question.
Master caution, hydraulics. Master caution, hydraulics.
It's only because I'm
Master
testing the
caution,
light bulbs. Alright.
Master caution,
Yes, I hear you.
hydraulics.
Well, the tank is empty, but the pump is still running and sucking something, apparently. There it is. Low pressure. Center pumps are both off, and we are good to go. So, I'm going to step away for a little bit, guys. Thank you again so much for watching. Stick with me back in about an hour for our descent and landing into Toronto. Sooner than that, if we get some ATC online, don't know if that's going to happen. But in the meantime, as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I do appreciate it. And we will talk to you guys at the top of descent. Have a good rest of your afternoon, and we'll see you in a bit.
Sorry, I know I messed up. You can go back. I can go back.
It's alright. You'll never be alone again. You're with me now. You're with me. I have such wonderful, wonderful things to show you.
I see those eyes in my isolation, dividing lines drawn across the gray. Feel the driving winds coming over us. Say my name before I venture to the snow. These frozen feathers are all I need to let go. To be this close, to stand so far, to see you just beneath the surface. To keep the faith alive. As I swim through frozen mercury, say my name before I venture to the snow. These frozen feathers are all I need
Alright everybody, we're back. Captain Abs is back in the flight deck again for the final hour of our flight to Toronto today. We are still in cruise here at 35,000 feet, but we're going to get ready to set up our arrival into Toronto very soon here. Flight is 88% complete according to Sim Toolkit Pro, which puts us somewhere over Michigan, I believe, at this point. So we're going to be starting down in about 20 minutes, so it's as good a time as any to start looking into what's going to be the arrival today into Toronto. And as happens on VATSIM so often, we do end up with some controllers online. You can just see them scrolling into view there. We do have Tower, Ground, and ATIS online out in Toronto, so great. Looking forward to that. We're going to start joining the arrival here at Eisenman just in about a few minutes, but we won't have to start down probably till about the time we cross Lake Huron here. Like I said, about 20 minutes until we reach that top of descent point, but we are definitely getting close to it now, so it's time to start getting ourselves set up for that arrival process. Just turn off that live map, because if I'm not looking at it, it's still using up lots of processor power when it's up, so let's hop back in the airplane and get rid of that obnoxious noise, because boy, those engines are loud from the outside. A lot nicer in here. Alright, give me 1 second. I'm just going to do something here on my other computer for a moment. But I will be here in 1 second to set ourselves up for our arrival. I just got to do one thing here. Alright guys, so I just thought I would post a little something there. And Jamie, you're still here. Nice to see you're still watching. You're a very faithful viewer, to say the least. Only 10 hours and 5 minutes to go on your flight, and here I am bitching about 1 hour to go. But you will get a good solid night's sleep before you get to your arrival at Montreal, that's for sure. Alright, so we are going to start preparing for our arrival into Toronto here. I'm going to start doing some things pretty quickly to make sure we are all up and ready for business here. And the first thing is, let's grab the ATIS here. So doing it through vPilot here, I just grabbed the text ATIS. Information, Mike, winds are calm, 15 miles, visibility, few clouds of 3,000. Only -6 out there, -12. It's a beautiful day out there. Actually, I was out there for a few minutes shoveling some of the fresh snow off my driveway, so it's a beautiful day out there. 30 on the meter, so before we forget, let's set that. See that in white text, and then it's ready to go, just right down there at the bottom. And let's see here, ILS runway 05 and ILS 06 left, departure runway 05 and 06 left. So we're actually landing the other orientation than what I was expecting, which is going to require a little change of pace. So first of all, first things first, let's change it in here, because it's going to affect our top of descent point. Our top of descent point is going to be sooner because we're landing straight in. So let's do Nuber for arrival to runway 05 05 anyways for now. It has the same restriction for 05 and 06 left. I have to do the Eisenman transition, and then I have to select, where did it go here? I had it. Where is it? There it is. ILS-05 via Zycam. Execute. So this will recalculate my top of descent point, and then the Zycam actually was not necessary. So I'm going to take this DLPA and move it up on top of this DLPA. Alani DLPA. If you're unsure, look at the charts. I know. Toronto's my home base. I know it well. I know what the approach is supposed to say. So that has changed our top of descent point to make it probably about 3 or 4 minutes earlier, because we're not going around the long way. So good times. All right, perfect. So the first thing I really want to do, and I had to make sure we had the correct top of descent planned in there, is we really want to check out the performance here. So if I can turn my head in such a way that you guys can see this. Let's see here. So I have to type in CYYZ. There we go. Runway 05. And actually, before I do anything else, show landing. Oh, I gotta set it something, I guess. Alright, show landing. Show en route landing. So now I gotta do this again. So CYYZ. You'd think I'd get better at this with practice, but I do not. And 06. So 05. Should be a dry runway out there today. Winds are supposed to be calm. Show keyboard. So we will consider them to be calm. Outside air temperature of, we said, -6. And 30.30 for the altimeter setting. If we take no credit for the reversers, we do a flat 30 landing. Air conditioning on, but anti-ice I don't expect we're going to need. Do we still have the anti-ice on? We do still have the anti-ice on. I forget about it in this airplane. The airplane I fly at, the system is automated, so I don't even think about it. Let's do auto brake 2. And that's a bit of a problem for me, because then when I get into an airplane where it's not automated, I forget that it's running, and it wastes more fuel having it running when you don't need it. Alright, so non-normal, none. And what I need is the weight as well. So the landing weight down here is going to be 120,100. So we'll just round it to 120,000. That's close enough for what we're doing. 120,000. And calculate. Alright, so for 120,000, we're going to have a VREF plus 5 of 140 knots. We should only require 6,400 of the 10,000 feet available on 05. So even if we land on 06 left with the similar performance, we'll have plenty of room on that runway as well. So if we get a last-minute runway switch, that should also not be a problem. And there you are, Jamie. I see you're on. See, you're texting me here on VATSIM now. I didn't put 2 and 2 together for a second there with the call sign, but now I put it together. Okay, so the performance data checks out here. And let's get some other stuff up here. We need to have terminal charts. More than anything, we are going to need to... Okay, so we're going to need to edit our clip now, because we're on the wrong side. So, star... We need the Nuber 4 for 05 and 6 left. We also need the approach ILS-05, and we'll load 06 left, and whatever works better. 05 actually I think works better for us because we're WestJet today. We're parking at Terminal 3, so 05 is actually a little bit better for us because it gets kind of closer to where we want to be. So hopefully we'll get 05 for arrival. We're going to plan on that for now. So let's just get the stuff all programmed in here. The minimums. Sorry, down here at the bottom. I gotta do this, aren't I? Alright, that's what we're going to do. 764, 1097, and 057. So first of all, the minimums are 764. Perfect. 1097. And 1097. Alright, and last but not least, set course on your side, 057. I made it. I win.
057 set checked.
All right. I think we got everything more or less set up, and we are ready for the approach briefing. Let's just actually we gotta just load in the Block 30 numbers, which does jive. VREF of 135 plus 5 will be 140, which is what we're expecting according to our performance data, so that works for me. Okay, are you ready for the approach briefing? Are you ready for the descent briefing?
Ready.
There we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I've got this up here, I'm going to pull this up here so we can compare the two, and let's do it. Alright, so the speeds are in and the distances are checked. We are doing the Nuber 4 arrival to runway 05 is the expectation at this point. This is on plate 10-2 Echo 3 and effective on the 20th of June of 2019. The bold note, RNAV 1 DDI or GNSS is required, so we should test the RMD1 once we pass Eisenman. 100 miles safe 49 jets only, and refer to the CDO chart as well. And we got a big, long, complicated routing here, so we just passed Shot. So we already passed Eisenman, we just passed over Shot. We're on our way to Penalty, Box, Ebgag, Nakbo. Then we go to Nuber, and we enter the terminal unit at ICBAT at 7,000, if I can get it to pull. There it is, ICBAT at 7,000 at 220 knots, that's programmed in. Then for 05, it's Alani and Delta, and at Delta we transition to the ILS 05. ILS runway 05 in Toronto, page 11-1, effective on the 21st of May of 2020. Loc ITX 1097 and 057M bound course. Got 1097 set both sides, and 057 set both sides. The glide slope at Kerpu 2030, it's right there, and the ILSDA again 764, which is what we got over there. The touchdown zone at 564, which we should have 550 there on the landing elevation, so that checks, and the MSA 3,100 feet, all sectors around Toronto. The missed approach is climb straight ahead to 1,100 feet. Then a left climbing turn to 3,000, intercept the 013 radial to AvTech and hold at 3,000. The notes say radar is required, 100 miles safe is 49, simultaneous approach is authorized with 6 left and right, local reliable 10 degrees of center line, procedure turn not authorized. Yeah, that's basically it. After Delta, it's Kerpu, and that's it. We're straight in. It's a 3-degree glide slope. Pappy's on the left side, ALSF 2 lighting system, and RVR 2600 or a half mile is what we require. And that's basically all I've got right now. Once we land on 05, we'll plan the high-speed exit on Hotel 3, Hotel Bravo, down to Terminal 3. The only hotspot is crossing runway 33 right along the way, and gate assignment, I had one because I looked it up on flight aware. And a similar flight to this one was Charlie 29 is the gate. So we'll plan Charlie 29. I'm going to write that down so I don't forget it. And that's basically it. So Charlie 29 is going to be in here somewhere on this side, I believe. So we'll probably taxi in and out with Juliet. That's the expectation. But we'll follow the ATC instructions since we do have some ATC online. So that's it for the charts. Terrain, again, 3,100 feet all around Toronto. The weather is beautiful VFR day, a bit windy, or no, calm winds. A bit cold is what I'm trying to say, but otherwise it's a sunny day. Operational, no MELs affecting this aircraft right now. And no TAMs, always good to have a quick look at those. And no TAMs here. For Vancouver, we never looked at before we left Toronto. Yankee Delta Papa. Don't see anything for 05. Or really 06 left either, for that matter. So I'd say from this direction we're good to go. Just a bunch of the deltas are closed. That's fine. That's it. Fuel, as we said before, we need about 6 tons to go to Ottawa. We've got 10.7 in the tanks right now, and we are showing, where is it here, progress? 9.8 when we get into Toronto. So, yeah. We have definitely 3,000 pounds extra. We can hang out for easily 20 to 30 minutes or do a go-around without too much of an issue. And that's all I've got. Do you have any questions?
No questions.
Very good. And we are coming up to our top of descent point here now in the next just couple of miles here. Looks like it's about 30 miles away. So I think what we'll do now is we'll just set that lower altitude. What we'll do is we will just set 7,000 for that one restriction on the arrival. There we go. So we got, yep, can't seem to set it. There we go. 7,000 feet is set for the arrival, and that's it. Yeah, we are ready for our arrival in Toronto. Hopefully, computer doesn't bog down too much because it really does. It really does like Pearson. It's a very busy airport. Now, Firefox is using a lot of resources here, actually, now that I look at it. I have a ton of Firefox screens open here, so I might start closing some of the ones that I do not need. Pardon me for a second while I do that. There you go. I already cut my memory footprint there by 10%. Just by doing that. I tend to want to keep my Navigraph charts open just in case. So I'm trying to just pick which tabs do I need open, which tabs can I get rid of here. I can get rid of that one, I can get rid of that one. And it's funny, like, you don't realize how much you're... I'm a multi-tabber in a browser. I tend to use Firefox now, but I used to use Chrome, and either way, I was a multi-tabber. I would have sometimes, depending on what I was doing, if I was looking up stuff, I would just open a new tab every time I wanted to look up something new, so I would end up, you know, after a good browsing session, 15, 20, 25 tabs open, maybe 2 or 3 different windows with 5 to 10 tabs in each. Just the way my mind works, and I want to have those things ready to go back to at any point in time, so I like to have them all open. But having multiple tabs open like that does penalize your performance when you're doing something like flight simming. You don't want to penalize that performance too much, so having the ability to open tabs on another computer, always gold. Or even on your tablet or somewhere else, but anywhere where you can open up some information without having to necessarily put it on the computer. But if I want to show you anything in the stream, obviously it's got to be on the same PC that is doing the streaming. So I got back probably about 3 or 4 frames per second just from closing all those tabs that I didn't need to have open all this time. Alright. Yeah, this is the one thing I found. And I think we're victims of what we want. We become a society of we need to have it now, and so the developers of these major softwares, and really web browsers are one of the most critical softwares in use today. You need it to interface with almost everything, and I mean, you can have your own standalone applications, but in the end of the day, the web browser is the Swiss Army knife. It can do almost everything, and it can surf almost everywhere. So, but again, we want to have this instant access information, so these browsers are always working hard behind the scenes trying to keep that information up to date, keep everything ready to go the second you click on a new tab, ready to go the second you click on a new website. It almost starts preloading things before you even click it. And that, of course, uses resources, and more than a lot of people realize when they're surfing the web. Which, if you're just surfing the web and not doing anything else, it usually is not too bad, but your computer's more than capable of handling it. But when you're dedicating a large portion of your processor to something like running a flight simulator, then, you know, having a browser up at 10-15% of your CPU is going to make a big impact on your performance in the long run. Alright, we're coming right up to the top of drop here. What I'm going to do really quickly here, if I can do it, is... And she just did it anyways. Okay, I was going to do a descend now. This airplane is not so bad. I find other airplanes, that top of descent comes up so abruptly, and the airplanes often end up having to pitch down really hard to try and catch the vertical path, which is what happened here. If you'll see, we're already 500 feet above the path when it engaged. And the problem there is that then, of course, the airplane will accelerate if it's not programmed for and compensated for. Oh, look at that. We have Toronto Center after all. Alright, just got to contact me. Nice. Gonna get some ATC service today. Toronto Center, very good afternoon. WestJet 716, 330 descending on the Nuber for arrival. 4, I think it's 4. Hope it's 4.
WestJet 716, Toronto Center, good afternoon, sir. Let me get you to Squawk 2650.
Squawk 2650, WestJet 716. .650 in the box.
WestJet 716, narrator 95, flight level 310. Toronto altimeter 3030, when ready to send 1000.
Alright, altimeter 3030, our discretion to send 1000 for WestJet 716, thank you. Alright, 11,000 feet is now set, and we have ATC all the way to the gate now at this point. Nice. Kind of hoped it would happen like this. 64 gigabytes of RAM, Jamie updated to. While you're outdoing me, I thought I was doing pretty good when I upgraded my computer a year ago to 32 gigabytes of RAM, and I thought I'll never need that much. And really, P3D does not use that much of it. It's the processor that P3D uses. It's not the RAM that it really uses. Even looking at it right now, yeah, P3D is using about 3.5 gigs of my 32 gigs of RAM. At the end of the day, that's a very small, insignificant amount. Firefox and Sim Toolkit Pro are both each using about a gig right now, and that's it. Beyond that, very little memory usage anywhere else. I don't find that memory usage, even with 32, is much of an issue for me right now. And as far as running with a 1060, this is not the GTX 1060. It's a pretty good video card. This video card, I've had it in this computer now for 6 or 7 years. I've had it for quite some time now. And it's a pretty good, at least 5 years anyways. I can't remember exactly when I bought it, but it's been a while now. It's been a pretty good video card overall. It's obviously now, it's fairly low end. It's not so much the video card as it is the processor that still is a little bit of a bottleneck in this sim, and I find that it's trying really hard with the processor to kind of keep up and process all the information. It's not the video card that's sort of holding it back. So the video card is fine. It more than is good enough for what it's trying to do. I think probably the bigger limitation with the video card is not so much the fact it's 1060, but I think the fact that I think it's a 4 gig video card. Or is it 2 gig video? I think it's a 4 gig video card. It's been a long time. I've had this in this computer, so I don't even honestly remember. I think it's a 4 gig video card. So it's not... it's not the most amount of memory. Certainly when you start to do some of the higher end games, you can notice it. But I can max out a lot of lower end games with the 1060 quite nicely.
16, you expect runway 05.
So land runway 05, WestJet 716, thanks. Runway 05 as briefed. Excellent. Well, you know what we got to do too? Descent checklist.
Descent checklist. Pressurization. Landing altitude is 5 0 feet. Recall checked. Auto brake level 2. Landing data.
VREF 135, minimums 764 feet.
Checked. Approach briefing.
Complete.
Descent checklist complete.
Nice. Now he's happy. I do see some cloud coming up here. We are probably going to need to get the engine anti-ice on. I'll try not to let it fall too much. Yeah, P3D does not have a huge footprint most of the time. Toronto tends to bog it down, but it's not making full use of my cores either, is what I find too, which I find frustrating. You know, I find that, and one thing I did figure out to optimize P3D is to take it off the first core, first and foremost. I took it off the first core. It never runs on the first core anymore. It always runs on cores 2 through 8. And I find it runs better. That first core I think usually has so much overhead from all the other applications running that if I try to get P3D to use it, I find it penalizes performance. So turning off the first core tends to improve my performance by about 10%. 3030 inches set and cross-checked. "20 cores, 10 gigabytes of VRAM. Yeah, your machine's a beast compared to mine. Mine is an older machine that's still puttering along. I upgraded some stuff a year ago. Upgraded the processor and the memory a year ago. The video card is what holds it back at this point, I think. And not in my budget probably this year now to upgrade it. So as long as it's still functioning, it's going to be a GTX 1060 all the way, baby. At some point, I will upgrade it. I obviously will upgrade it. I'm looking forward to at some point upgrading it, but this year is not going to be a good year, so we're going to be sticking with what we got.
WestJet 716, continue to descend 4,000.
Descend to 4,000, WestJet 716. Alright, 4,000 feet is in there. That's just it. I'm not usually a huge kind of, you know, just because there's something new and fancy out there, I have to have it. I'm very much if it still works for me, I'm going to continue using it. My cell phone is probably, I think it's 4 years old now, maybe 5. It still works just fine. I actually cracked the screen about a year and a half ago. I was a little disappointed about that, but it's only cracked in one corner. So it still works just fine. I'm going to continue using it for years as long as it's still working. I'm not in a big rush to update that. And ditto for the computer. I'm not in a big rush to update it. It would be nice to have kind of a nicer video card to kind of match between the two, but I don't feel like it's a necessity. And yeah, like you said, if it ain't broke, I'm not going to fix it just yet. I don't have the money to be fixing stuff that isn't broken. Alright, still doing 330 knots. I imagine there's a level off built in here somewhere. Any second now it's going to start bringing the speed back here. 250 knots, I assume. Maybe, maybe not. There it comes. Okay, now it's doing it. Ah, that inevitable game of playing chicken with your VNav. Do I think that it's going to slow down soon enough to meet the speed restrictions, or do I take control to do it manually? And I do that. I play that game of chicken. I like to have faith that the FMS is programmed correctly, but not always the case. Yeah, I don't necessarily skip a generation per se. I just, like you said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If I feel like I can get by with what I've got, I won't necessarily be on the market to replace it. It's only when something is really kind of reaching the end of its life. This year I did actually replace my laptop. The previous one was starting to get unbelievably slow. I'm not sure if it was the hard drive was reaching the end of life, but it was getting ridiculously slow. I could not do anything. You know, it would take sometimes 7 to 8 minutes just to reboot it, sometimes more. So I replaced that this year because I felt like that was reaching its end of life. It was no longer an asset. It was holding me down when I was trying to do things. So, all right, it's trying to slow for the 220 here, but we're not going to make that 7,000 if we don't start going down a little faster. So we're going to get a little speed break out because we are 700 feet above the path and increasing. It's trying to bleed off speed and altitude at the same time here, so I'm going to get some speed brake in here and see if we can't help us out a little bit here. And while we're at it, approach checklist. 3030 set.
Speedbird 12 Charlie, Toronto Center, good afternoon, sir. Get you Squawk 2616. Could you repeat that squawk, please, Speedbird 12 Charlie? Speedbird 12 Charlie, we'll get Squawk 2616.
3030 set.
3
2616,
0 set. Approach checklist complete.
Alright, now we're getting back on the path. We can start closing up those speed brakes. Now we're within a couple hundred feet of the path. That's going to be okay.
12 Charlie,
Might need a little bit of the engine anti-ice again, and this is going to kind of mess with our descent profile.
1000.
Altimeter 3030 when ready to descend 1000.
Yeah, today I've got the tailwind was helping me. We had that the other day. We had a headwind coming back from Boston, and boy, it was 160 knots at one point. Yeah, you're grounding like 320, 340. You're like, oh my god, are we ever going to get there? I remember when I used to think that 320 was fast. Alright, here we go. I don't know why it hasn't switched to 20 knots for the ICBAT crossing, so that's it. I give up on the game of chicken. I'm going to set it to 20 knots. And it does actually have a decel point in there, so actually I'm going to close the speed brakes again and just let it decelerate, because there is a decel point there programmed in, and we're hitting it right about now, so yeah, we're pretty much almost level here. It's working out just fine. Yeah, there are some strong winds out there today. I think that's part of the reason why Canada especially is so cold. It's not too bad in Toronto and not too bad on the west coast, but in the middle of the prairies there, in the middle of Canada, minus 30 degrees. Ridiculously cold. Glad I live where I live at the end of the day.
Skycraft 2 Victor, you can Squawk 2665. 2665, Skycraft 2 Victor. Skycraft 1 Victor. What runway would you like to depart today?
Alright, so if we're below all that icing, we can go ahead and kill the anti-ice. This will help reduce our idle thrust here a little bit, I think. Yeah. That should hopefully help us catch the path a little bit here. We're a little bit above the glide slope, so we're going to increase our descent a little bit by getting out some speed brakes.
Okay, Roger. So the airport is at our discretion. We'll contact you airport first. Skycraft 1 Victor +1.
There we go. Now we're getting back on path. We had a nice descent point there for 4,000.
360 at 6, altimeter 3030.
And yeah, we are just going to cross Milton over there.
Glide slope alive.
Glide slope alive from below, but that's okay. Or is it from above? No, actually it's from above. Okay, we're below the glide slope already. Perfect. Close those speed brakes. We don't need those anymore. That's just a waste of energy. Great, love it. While we're here, before we get busy a little later on, let's get the tower frequency up. Tower's up. And let's also see if we can, yep, we can get a gate.
5,000.
Charlie 29. I don't know why it wouldn't offer WestJet as a default choice if I'm flying WestJet, but anyways. Alright, yeah. You notified the back end. Doing good. Yeah, Toronto must be starting to load now because my...
716, you cleared ILS approach runway 05, contact tower now 118.7, good day.
Cleared the ILS approach runway 05 and contact the tower now 118.7, WestJet 716, good day. A little bit early to be calling the tower, I think, but anywho.
Localizer alive.
Flaps 5.
Flaps 5.
Toronto Tower, good afternoon. WestJet 716 is established on the ILS 17 miles back.
WestJet 176, good afternoon. Toronto Tower, Wincom, clear land runway 05.
Cleared to land 05, WestJet 716.
Checked.
Cleared to land. Speed 190, Loc.
Checked.
Here's the level off. Bring the speed back to 180, should be good. Just flew over Milton, following the 401 down. That's where it meets the 407, and the airport is just a few miles up ahead. Nice clear day. It's cold, but it's not really cold here. It's -6, really. That's not that cold. Glide slope. Go around altitude set. Glide slope.
Check.
Just starting to see right at our 12 o'clock. Runway's coming into sight there. Just starting to see that runway. Flaps 10.
Flaps 10.
Gear down, flaps 15.
Gear down. Flaps 15.
Speed 150.
Checked.
Alright. Before I forget, let's get ground ready to go. Perfect. Flaps 30. Speed brake arm. Flaps 30. Flaps 30.
Flaps 30.
Landing checklist.
Landing checklist. Engine start switches.
Continuous.
Speed brake.
Armed.
Landing gear.
Down.
Flaps.
Flaps 30, green light.
Landing checklist complete.
Alright, nothing left to do but land. There's 1,000 feet. Stable. Alright. Engaging danger mode. The pilot is going to fly the airplane. buttered the bread, he says.
Checked.
That's weird.
Speed brake up. Reversers normal.
There's 80 knots.
Auto brake disarmed. 60 knots.
Vector 716, welcome to Toronto. Exit right. Contact ground on 121.65 clear.
Alright, right turn on Hotel 3 over to ground 2165, WestJet 716, good day.
Check.
Oh, somebody spawned on the threshold of the runway. Nicely done, guys. Nicely done.
Check. Check.
Did you see that?
Check.
Spawned on the runway threshold.
Check.
Swap com 1.
Roger. Check.
Turn to ground hello, WestJet 716 on Hotel 3, Gate Charlie 29er.
WestJet 716, Toronto ground. Taxi via Hotel Bravo Alpha Juliet cross 15 left.
Taxi Hotel Bravo and enter at Alpha Juliet cross for 15 left, WestJet 716, thank you.
Check.
And also parking at your discretion.
Roger. Clear on the left.
Clear right. Check.
Clear to cross 15 left.
Check.
This wind's calm. It's not hard to land when winds are calm. Well, that's not true, actually. It's funny, but the tougher the winds, the better your landing is, at least in the real world.
Check.
Because you can feel things better. That's a big problem. Big problem with the sim is, of course, you can't feel things. Okay to clean up.
Check. Master caution. Anti-ice.
Checked. In the real world, though, when the winds are calm and you tend to have one of those flights where it feels smooth the whole way, you tend to do worse landings because you just sort of get lulled into this trance almost of it's just so beautiful, everything's going to just work out fine, and you tend to not really flare and try that hard in the landing. Whereas when you have like a really, really tough landing, like really heavy gusty crosswinds and blowing snow and whatever else, you tend to really stick those landings and stick them well because you're so focused on the task. It's the days when it's calm and the air is totally smooth, you tend to botch the landing because you're lulled into this false sense of security by just the smoothness of the whole operation. It's kind of, it's amusing how that works, like opposite to what you would think. But yeah, it's easier to stick the landing when you're really focused on it on those strong gusty crosswind days. But nevertheless, here we are. We made it to Toronto, guys. Thank you so much for watching. It's been a pleasure as always. Paris, Atlanta, and had a hard time understanding the French delivery controller. Yeah, that's one of the things I still love also about VATSIM 2 is the fact that it brings together people from around the world, different cultures, different languages, and sticks them all together to try and you know, share in this hobby that we all enjoy. And it's great to go to England, you hear guys talking in British accents. You go to Paris and you talk to somebody who obviously speaks French and English is not their first language. and it's absolutely it's such a fun adventure on VATSIM in that way. It's you know, it's more realistic than I think any AI generated ATC can do, and that's part of the reason why. Is you can't even, you know, the regional dialects and the accents, you could try to do it with AI, but there's not really, you won't get the same variety. It's going to be the same couple of voices. That's the nice thing about VATSIM, is it's 100 different, it's 1,000 different voices, lots of different people on there all the time. So here we come to gate Charlie 29. I can see our guys there. Start the APU, please.
Starting APU.
So it's definitely a fun thing to be on VATSIM. I am looking forward to potentially doing something new and different as well now. I'm interested, and I'm looking at starting some regular ATC streaming on YouTube, with using YouTube as a streaming service. I've never really used them for streaming, so I'm curious to see how their streaming service compares to Twitch, how the quality and everything else works out, the ease of use for me. So I'm thinking about doing that and doing some ATC streams just to sort of play with it, experiment with it. I've not necessarily anything wrong with Twitch per se, but just want to try it out and see how well it works on YouTube. So if you haven't already, make sure you're on my YouTube channel as well. And like I said, probably in the next week or so, I may experiment with it a little bit and try some streams, so live streams of some ATC, to see how that works out. You want to learn how to fly a Boeing, give you a good tutorial. I'll be honest, there's tons of good tutorials out there. I could probably give you a rundown, but I don't have the time to do it right now. It would take an hour, and we literally just finished a 5-hour flight, so now it's time to stop staring at the screen for a little bit. Lights and doors. Lights and doors.
Check.
So it's time to stop staring at the screen for a little while. If you want to, you can rewind this video. I kind of explained some of what I'm doing at the start, a little bit. There's tons of good tutorials on YouTube as well. So if you're unfamiliar with it, and taxi light is off, good. Yeah, if you're not familiar with the airplanes, you can definitely look up the information on YouTube. If you have a PMDG Boeing aircraft, their built-in tutorials are great. They have tutorial documents, and they are really well written, step by step, to get you the airplane started, to get you through the basic steps. So I don't know if that's something you're interested in, if you have the PMDG products, but their tutorials are really good for first steps at learning these airplanes. They're not going to teach you everything you need to know. They'll teach you enough to kind of get off the ground the first time and use the FMC and use the airplane. So yeah, I could probably show you some stuff about how to operate the Boeing, but frankly at this point in the stream I'm ready to pull the plug, because we've been at it for 5 hours. So if you want some guidance on flying any of the Boeings, check out YouTube. Tons of good videos. You can check out the start of this stream, and you'll see me going through a lot of stuff, but the FO goes through it because it's FS2 crew. Let's see here. APU generators are on. Yeah, so we can go ahead and shut down the engines. And kill the anti-collision light. Kill the seat belts. And I think the bridge should be docking. If it's not, I will request it to dock. Yeah, time does fly. Thank you for watching the whole thing. Normally when I take my little breaks I tend to lose people, so it's great that you stuck with me through those breaks. I appreciate that. Waiting for other services to complete. Hopefully these services complete soon. I may have to just reset this. I often find I have to reset this, depending on the airport, because it seems to get caught here and doesn't seem to know that everything else is done, so... Nope. Don't do that. Don't reposition. Reset. Nope, now it doesn't want to do a reset either. Really? We'll do it this way. There we go. Here comes the jet bridge finally. and we can request boarding. It's probably not going to work, so we have to just do a quick reset of GSX. Just restart that. That'll make all the vehicles disappear for a moment, but that's okay. Shutdown checklist.
Shutdown checklist. Fuel pumps, off. Probe heat, off. Hydraulic panel, set. Flaps. They're still down. Parking brake.
Why do you not put the flaps up anymore, buddy? Set.
Engine start levers.
Cut off.
Weather radar.
Off. Off.
Off. Shutdown checklist complete.
Check. The amount of all this information and procedure scares you. You know what? It is a lot to learn. I absolutely will give you that, for sure. There's tons of stuff to learn. You know, a modern airliner is a pretty complicated machine. The key is to kind of take it little steps at a time. You know, so depends on what airplane you have. Like I said, if you have the PMDG products, run through the tutorials. Their tutorials are great. They teach you the basics of how to fly the airplane. They don't explain everything, but they get you through the basic steps, and then you can sort of learn more from there. If you don't have PMDG, or you know, you don't want to go through their manual, YouTube is full of tons of tutorials. There's so many sort of aspects to operating the airplane. There's flying the airplane itself, but there's also setting up the flight plan and understanding IFR procedures. You're right, there's so much to learn. The best way to tackle it is a little bit at a time. So if you want to learn how to fly a Boeing, start with some of those introductory videos that sort of show you all the things that you need to do to get going. And work on that initially, work on just learning how to fly the airplane, learn a little bit about how to program the FMC, and learn about how to read the charts as well. There's tons of information out there. I have spent years learning this stuff. So, you know, I kind of make it look easy because I've done it so many times, and you will too when you do it enough times. But it's not something you can learn overnight. If you're committed to it, though, there's tons and tons of resources out there on the internet. There are the real-world manuals if you want them. There are literally thousands upon thousands of Boeing 737s flying out there, tens of thousands of Boeing 737 pilots out there, and the internet is full of materials for them, real-world and simulator. So definitely there's tons of resources out there. I'd say YouTube is one of the best places to start. It won't explain everything, not everything will be perfect, but it'll definitely get you kind of in the right direction of how to get an airplane started. Programming the computer alone is a whole other big ball of wax. So yeah, I wish I had the time. If you joined us like 5 hours ago, I could have spent hours and hours explaining how this airplane works. But yeah, it's pretty much the end of my stream here. I've spent enough time online today. But yeah, there's lots of resources out there. YouTube is a great resource. Not everybody out there is an expert. Some people have...
WestJet 32, your departing runway would be 06 left.
Some people... Some people out there know what they're doing. Some people pretend to know what they're doing and are not particularly good at it. But hopefully if you watch a couple of different videos, they should lead you in the right direction. But yeah, like if I do a search, even right now, just on YouTube...
the Admiral 5 departure or the left 7 departure?
If you just, depending on what airplane you're interested in, but if you just search for tutorial. So, for example, for the Boeing 737, if I just search for a Boeing 737 tutorial, you know, I come up with all sorts of different videos right here. Some of them are real-world videos, some of them are sim videos. You'll get everything, you know, everything and anything in between. So, you could definitely learn. Thanks to YouTube.
Just give you your clearance now. You don't have to leave immediately after getting clearance.
Hetman 777, good luck, and if you want some help, follow my channel here on Twitch, and maybe next time I get online and do a stream, I can help you out as well. But that is it. That is the end of our flight to Toronto today.
WestJet 32, Toronto.
We're parked at the gate. Another leg done of the pilot's life career. So next up is Toronto down to Orlando, where hopefully it'll be hot and sunny. And then eventually Orlando back to Vancouver and a whole bunch of other stuff. It's a nice big long schedule. I'm looking forward to getting all these legs done. But Jamie, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it, and keep your eyes open. I'm going to try and stream a little bit more regularly in the next little while, anyways. Try to be more like once a week than once every 2 weeks, as much as my time allows, anyways. But thanks for watching. Have a good flight, and hopefully I will see you sometime. Just a quick run through here, job market, interested to see if anybody's offering me any good jobs here. What have I got here? Canada Rouge would like to hire me, but that's mostly 6.7s. I don't have any good 6.7s. Or 319s, that could work. Cargo jet, again, cargo aircraft, 5.7, 6.7s, things I don't have in my library. And I'm not familiar with these three airlines here, being parts of the world that I'm not familiar with, so I'm not sure if they would be types of aircraft that I'd be willing to fly. Don't have a lot of good scenery there either, so I'm definitely not going to be probably heading for those, but there we go. Anyways, that is it for today. We are slowly eking up through a pilot's life, getting some experience points, getting my way towards being a captain eventually. Ooh, fancy. But it's going to be a while still. 120 hours logged in this career so far, though, so not too bad. Having fun doing it. I'm really enjoying it, so I think that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe and healthy out there, everybody. Make sure, if you haven't before, please follow this channel on Twitch. Subscribe to me on YouTube. There's going to be some fun stuff, I think, coming out on YouTube in the not-too-distant future. So make sure you're subscribed to me on there as well. And otherwise, have a happy, safe, healthy weekend. And we will see you guys all real soon.